Howdy, and welcome to another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I'm your host, Daniel Dauphin.
I wanted to take just a minute on this podcast episode to tell you a little bit about the online course that we are offering now, the BIT Course 2.0, Understanding How and Why Bits Function. You can find it at the website, thebitcourse.com, which will be linked in the show notes. This is a very comprehensive course. We've got two different versions. There's a masterclass version where weekly we have live calls and go over the modules and the study guide. That course has been running 25 to 30 hours over the course of 7 weeks. If you take that version, you're also eligible to go through our BIT certification program and take that test. It's at no additional cost if you want to add consulting about bits to your repertoire of body work or whatever else you might be doing. We also will have an evergreen version that you can take anytime you work at your own pace. It is less expensive. It's also a lot less content. You don't have the weekly Zoom calls with me. Those are going about 2 to 2.5 hours each week. So the masterclass course winds up 25, 30 hours long. The evergreen course you're going to do in 12 to 15, something like that. So check it out. You can go to thebitcourse.com, sign up for the free newsletter. You'll get a 30-minute video on the foamy mouth and all of the implications of that, as well as 5 or 6 articles that I've written regarding bits. Get a feel for the content. This will absolutely be some of the best money and time you have ever spent on your horsemanship journey, I assure you. And it is not discipline specific. We cover just about every aspect of the horse world that you can think of. Our guest today is Dr. Shelley Appleton. I'm very excited. She is my first Australian guest to be on the podcast. She is the founder of Calm, Willing, Confident Horses and the co-host of the Canter Therapy podcast, which y'all definitely need to check out. Dr. Shelley is also the author of Confidence and Trust, Solving the Human and Horse Equation, and Buying and Supporting a New Horse, The Essential Guide. She gives clinics, lessons, and online courses like establishing a starting point, how to round pin, how to groundwork, and how to build a riding foundation on a horse. She has a doctorate in human learning, which she uses in her coaching and teaching to allow deeper understanding of strategies, helping people develop their awareness, thinking, and skill sets to be more in tune with their horse. Dr. Shelley, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for that, Daniel.
This is a really neat episode for me. I haven't talked to anybody completely halfway around the world yet, and we're actually on different days. I'm Friday evening at 5 p.m. You're a Monday Tuesday evening. You're Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. It's right. Crazy. Time travelers, huh?
That's right. And I can say that Tuesday so far is going pretty well.
Very good. Very good. Also, y'all are having winter and we're having summer. It's a crazy world we live in right now.
Although it's a very mild winter. So, yeah.
I wish I could say the same about our summer so far.
Yeah, no, you've been roasting, but we've gone through that.
Yes, ma'am. Well, we start everybody off with our icebreaker lightning round questions, and these are for points and prizes. So you want to be on your A game here, okay?
Go for it.
All right. Our first question, if you were a Jedi, what % chance is there that you would misuse the Force?
It'd be rare. The hero story, which is what the whole Jedi story, Star Wars, Harry Potter, you name it, the hero's journey is very important to my heart. Something I value a lot is justice. That's a big bent through me, is a value. So yeah, I think I'd be total Luke Skywalker.
Fair enough. Morning or evening?
Look, when it comes to working horses, I'm a total morning person. Nothing better, that great feeling of getting up super early, getting all the horses worked, getting all your training done, and then having the afternoon to chill is like my idea of lovely. However, I'm the most prolific when I write and study at night. So it's like I have 2 different tasks, depends.
Okay, that's fair enough. How long do you dunk a cookie in milk? Do you like a soggy cookie or still a crunchy cookie with just a little drip of milk on top?
Well, it kind of depends on the cookies, because in Australia, we're pretty famous for our Tim Tams. So the good old Tim Tam, you ever heard of those? If you haven't, I might have to send you a packet.
I've heard of them. I've never had one. Yes, ma'am.
The Tim Tam is that biscuit has a bit of a chocolate coating, so you got to be a little bit careful to soak that too long, especially if it's a hot drink, because you will melt and destroy the Tim Tam quite quickly. However, if it's a bit of an Anzac biscuit, probably haven't heard of that as well. That's an Australian biscuit. It's like an oat, and it's got oats in it. Some people put some sultanas in it, and then it's got golden syrup and stuff like that. It's a famous cookie that we used to send to, history of, we send packets of biscuits off to our soldiers during the war and stuff like that. That can be a little bit of a hard biscuit. So that can go a little bit longer.
Let it soak it up. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
What is your favorite way to treat aches and pains?
Whoa. Yeah, wow. Well, that's a bit of a complicated question, because you see, I've got a background in being a pharmacist.
Oh, okay.
I'm a little although I don't actually take a lot of medication. So I'm a little bit, even though I'm a pharmacist, I'm a bit skeptical about all that. Probably do a little bit of rest. I really like we've got this stuff over here called Physio Cream with an F. I don't know whether you have it. That's pretty good. But I do a lot of Pilates and a lot of just walking, just a lot of care of my actual muscles and skeletal system and fascia and stuff like that. So it depends whether I've got like an acute injury or it's just which I do have a lot of aches and pains. And I do go to the physio once a week. How's that?
Okay. What skill or technique do you not have with a horse that you admire in someone else and wish you did have?
Oh, wow. That's a really, really good question. I've actually got a whole list.
Okay.
First one is that I have never, ever had the opportunity to work with a mule, ever.
Okay.
We just don't have them over here. I think the closest I ever came to a mule was a mini horse crossed with a mini donkey. That was as close as it got, and that wasn't available to play with. So I've actually never been able to do that, and I've heard that they're pretty different to work with. Have you had much experience with that?
I have started maybe 20 or 25 mules, probably.
Wow.
Ray Hunt had a pretty famous saying that I agree with completely. A mule is just like a horse, only more so. So yeah, okay. I wouldn't say they're that different. They just might, like those times when you have to give them time to think, they may need a little more time to think. I find them slower in general to come along than a horse, but all the same principles and everything still apply to me. They're not that different. They're just, everything's, the boundaries are a little wider, maybe would be the way to think about.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. So that's on my bucket list. The other thing is that, and this really surprises people, but I think you just got to understand Australia and our wild horse situation, is that I've never, ever got to work with a purely wild horse, ever. Right. That's never come across my thing. So I have massive respect for Mustang and wild horse trainers. And although I know I'd nut it out, because I'd love nutting that out, I've never had that opportunity, and I'm very open about that. However, I've got a hell of a lot of experience with messed up horses that have, already been started or off the track or whatever, things like that. But that is on my bucket list, like nutting that out. Yeah. And so what were you going to say?
I was just going to ask, I'm familiar with Brumbies is what y'all call them there, but what is, like, are there very many of them? Is it really hard to come by, or do they have adoption programs like we have with Mustangs here in the U.S.? What's the situation with them over there?
Well, currently at the moment, we're shooting them from helicopters and have ground crews growing, and it's terribly controversial. It's really sad. They're considered a feral pest. And it's really quite controversial because a lot of, although like the Brumbies are just really mixed, unlike your Mustangs, and Australia has a completely, well, you've kind of embraced them. Australia never has. And it's really sad. There's a famous group of Brumbies that are up in Cosio National Park, which is basically where it snows in Australia. And they've been linked back to the Whaler horse, which was like an Australian horse that was made very famous with our cavalry in World War One. And they're known as being very hardy, and they were very great, bit of an Australian icon. And these horses are related to those horses. But yeah, there's a lot of controversy. As I said, they're going in and they've closed down the park to eradicate them. There's been a lot of push to try to save them or put it off. There's been a lot of controversy and about overestimation of numbers. Like, I went up there myself in November last year, and in 10 days, I think I probably saw 15 horses. And they're saying that there's, 25,000 horses up there, and it's just not. Anyway, so that's a bit of a sad bit of controversy about Australia and the in our wild horses. There is no real program. And even then there's been just even people calling themselves Brumby chainers that have been taking them, have then been found that are just, shipping them off for dog meat and stuff like that anyway. So it's a bit of a sad case for the wild horse in Australia. We just don't really embrace it. And the equestrian community doesn't really get behind it. It's really strange. But going out and actually spending the time to look at wild horses that I did in November with a guy from America, actually. I don't know if you've heard of him. And if you haven't, you probably should get him on your podcast because he's an interesting fellow. His name is Kerry Thomas. And I'd probably call him a real equine ethologist, like a guy that's gone and spent a lot of time studying Mustangs, like just watching them, observing them, being involved in a number of studies and stuff. But just someone that for like years and years of his life, like going out, into the bush, as we call it, or into the national parks, and just observing them. And he actually came up with his own theory of how horses kind of work together in herds, a bit of a herd dynamic theory. And he's actually spent the last number of years applying it to racehorse selection. But he's a pretty cool dude. His name's Kerry Thomas. Anyway, going out there and watching the horses with him, like just in the wild, it was really weird because it made me realize that although I've worked with this animal my whole life, it kind of felt like I'd worked with them, but I'd never bothered asking them where they lived, who they were married to, or anything like that. It was quite a real moving experience to work out that I actually had never appreciated this animal for what it was and how it had evolved to live. It was really quite an extraordinary experience. So I always recommend anyone, you work horses, go and watch them. Just go and watch them. I've got this great bit of footage. We were quite away from these horses, but you could actually tell, even though they were very quiet about it, they were quite disconcerted by us being there, even though we were way, way, way. And it was like the stallion kind of had enough at one stage, and he just cantered up towards us, stopped a bit of a way away, and just basically told us, like, I'm an animal of peace, but you guys we're not feeling comfortable about you, move on. And it's a great bit of footage. Anyway, if you haven't had a chance, go.
Yes, man. It gives new appreciation to the horse as a flight animal, right? How big that bubble is naturally versus what we tend to see in a domesticated environment and all.
Yeah. Yes, and just how peaceful they were. They're just very quiet going about. They're just, very quiet, going about their business, just living, just existing and surviving. And yeah, that was really interesting. And just how they just kind of organized themselves a little bit, real slow, just real careful. And Kerry's real interesting because he talks about like the herd dynamics, and it's kind of like a little bit more intricate and interesting than what we see. And he discovered it he realized he'd watch a herd, right? And then something would happen because he'd watch the whole herd and something would happen and he'd go, I couldn't work out what happened there. So what he'd do, he'd spend days just studying one horse, just watching one horse and just seeing how it all worked. And in the end, his theory is that there's one horse, the most important horse in the herd, that kind of makes the decisions. And they're not the pushy, beat you up one. They're normally the quietest one, because he says nature hides the most important horse, the one that's got the most independent thought to make decisions. And it's typically a mare. So every horse has a role. The stallion has a really, really important role. They're like a sentinel as they go around, and then you've got this mare that's, that's a pretty cool horse that's kind of calling the shots silently. And you could see it when this stallion came up to us and told us to like, back away now, people. It was really interesting because you watched it was only a very small group, 4 horses, and this important mare, the one that seemed to take the least amount of notice of us, when he galloped up to us and told us to bugger off, they flanked her. They just slowly moved around and put her in between them. It was really quite fascinating. Anyway, go on about that.
No, I like it.
That's very cool.
What do you feel like is the most important quality of a horseman or horsewoman?
Oh, self-awareness, for sure. Self-awareness. I identify this, like I try to break it into realms, because learning about horses and mastering them, it's not just one thing. There's a whole lot of dimensions, and I identify 3 main dimensions. The first one is that you need to understand the horse. If you don't understand horses, what you look at and you observe will be messed up. You won't be able to identify what that actually means, because we naturally look everything through our human lens, our human eyes, and we'll misjudge something or not understand something or misinterpret something. So you need to understand the horse. The next realm is that you need practical skills. You need practical skills to influence the horse. And I've started using that word influence instead of training or educating, because we influence them. And we influence them in so many ways. It's more than just direct training. It's how they're kept and, what you decide to do first, or even what time of day you work them, or how long you work them for, and where you work them and who you work them with, etc. So you need these practical skills. That's really important. But the final thing is self-awareness. You need to know how you impact that animal, and you need to be aware of it, because that's the thing that gets lost. That's the thing where you can watch someone, like just say one of my clients might walking leading a horse, and it will be all over the shop and be really worried, and all I have to do is take the lead rope and instantly that horse will be a lot better. Why? Because how I feel inside about that, leading that horse is, the horse picks up. That's completely different. And so that's self-awareness and working on yourself. So that's the most important thing.
I like that. For sure.
Yeah.
Are you a do-it-yourselfer or a sub it out to someone else type of a person?
Nah, I'm a do-it-yourselfer. Yeah, it's so funny with my horsemanship kind of journey, if you want to call it that. From my ignorant awakening, it's like I've just learned, it's like every realm. It's funny at the moment, like my notepad that I'm using to take any notes, it's like I finally just got, what, whole horse nutrition thing, I got to work this thing out myself. Like I always know the basics, but it's like, damn it, this is the next realm. Earlier this year, what I did, for the last couple of years, I've dedicated myself to soundness. Okay, horse soundness, because I realized that every difficult horse I had, from the past, all ended up having something wrong with it. And, I've realized I need to get better at identifying that so I can refer horses to vets faster, because normally what happens is any difficult horse, tricky horse, inconsistent horse has all 100% of them has been revealed as having something not right with them. So I needed to get better at that. So I took myself on a bit of a study journey about that to make myself better at understanding it and seeing it so I could get it to the people that could help it. But now it's just like, now I realize that soundness is grossly affected by nutrition. So it's like, damn it. Okay. I've got to get my head around this now. So it's just like one thing after another. It's just so I can be better for people and be better at basically, encouraging them to go where they need to go to get help. So even just, so I can help them outsource and stuff, because I'm one person and I work with people all around the world. So I've got to be able to do that. Yeah, so I'm definitely a do-it-yourselfer.
I would also like to point out everything I heard right there was about how self-aware you are. Your recognition of weaknesses here and honesty about I'm weak here, and so I need to work on this, even though you're established, you're experienced, and still willing to be the beginner, so to speak, at this other aspect of things, all requiring self-awareness. Very good.
This might be the same as you, though. I'm sure it is. I can kind of tell because of your attitude, right? Mm-hmm. It's like I don't know about you, but my journey is probably a little bit different than most people. So, there's lots of, horsemen and horsewomen out there that, they grew up on ranches and they come from this whole family of fabulous horsemen. Well, I'm your quintessential hope, like typical person that has the career and the job and had just a handful of horses and then came across one that turned me inside out. And then that horse revealed to me that I was actually really crap. And then I had to come from a place of that. But what I did, if you told me 20 years ago that this is what I'd be doing as a job, I would have fallen over and laughed my head off. I'm doing this by complete and utter accident. And I did it because I was really, really crap. And it went like this. I discovered I was really crap. It was quite an uncomfortable experience. And I'll tell you about that story if you want, the ultimate thing of it. Let me tell you, right? This is what I discovered. So here I am, quintessential, I rode as a kid, had my pony, and unfortunately died as I was going into my final years of high school. I decided to concentrate on my final years of high school to do well there. I went to university, studied really hard. I did pharmacy to become a pharmacist, did my internship year, which is a year, and then I leased a horse and I saved up all my money that I could to buy the flashiest horse you've ever seen in your life, like the flashiest horse I could afford, right? This really flash, fancy warm blood, because I was a dressage queen, right? And anyway, this beautiful 7-year-old, fabulous, gorgeous horse rocks up off the horse track because, I bought him sight unseen because that's how good I was. And then I remember when I first got on him, it's like he stopped, turned around, looked at me, and I almost felt like he growled at me. But all he did is I could probably feel him going like, this person doesn't feel right. This person, like, who the hell are you? I've been ridden by good people my whole life, and who the hell are you riding me bad? And then he proceeded to scare the shit out of me for over 7 years. In that time, I managed to get another horse that didn't scare the shit out of me so much. But then I got into a relationship with a guy who's the reason why I'm sitting here. And he was lovely. He was an excellent horseman, and he was the greatest mentor ever because he was a great teacher. He never told you what you were doing wrong ever. He just waited. He waited for you to ask, and it took me a while to ask him. But one day he offered to ride my horse, and this particular horse, and I was quite sure he was going to die because, you see, he rode those quiet quarter horses because he was a rodeo man, right? Those quiet quarter horses, and that was different than these dressage horses, these warm bloods. Anyway, we're walking down to my arena, and I'm giving the lowdown of, because this horse, I labeled him sensitive. He was scared of the world. And I used to ride him on what I called the circle of safety on my arena, which was one circle at one end of the arena, which was near the gate, which is the closest to where he lived. And I rode him on that so much it formed a trench that when it rained, it filled up with water. Anyway, I'm giving him the lowdown of everything this horse is terrified of on the arena, like, don't ride him up there. He's scared of that. Anyway, I could tell that Gary, this guy's name, was walking down, and I could tell that he was thinking I was a bit mad with what I was telling him, which I thought was crazy because that was risk management. That was sensible to me to tell him that, right? And that's a crucial thing to understand about people, right? And I looked at him and I went, don't you want to know what he's worried about? And he went, I'll just wait for him to do something, but I'm not going to think he's going to do something. And that to me was crazy. Anyway, goes down, he gets on my horse. He asked it to walk forward, and it probably walked forward about 5 meters before he spooked, right? Which is exactly at the scary bush next to the gate. Totally predictable. Anyway, all this Gary did was give him a boot and asked him to canter, and I'm like fuck. Anyway, he then proceeds to lope this horse around the arena 5 times one way. He changed direction, loped him around. And I'm there watching this quietest horse in the world lope around all the places he couldn't be. And it was just like, and then it was just like, oh, this is not the horse. Anyway, Gary just rode up to me and he stopped in front of me. And I looked at him and I said, it's me, isn't it? And he went, yeah, it's you. And I go, what am I doing wrong? And he goes, you're creeping around him. You're telling him the world's terrifying and he's believing you. And you know what? That day I stopped creeping around him and it was amazing. Like that horse was the easiest fix job ever. Just had to fix me. And anyway, it was pretty sad. We then went to our first, because I'd never been able to compete in this flashless young warm blood that is now an old warm blood. Anyway, a little while after that, I took him to the first show. We won. We got huge marks. And 3 weeks later, he died of colic.
Oh.
Yeah. And so that's a little bit about what I do, is that I know a lot of people out there have a scooter. His name was Scooter, right? They've got scooters. Beautiful, lovely horses that they're just misunderstanding, and their horses are believing in the world's terrifying. So it's like, I know there's a lot of me's out there, a lot of very ignorant me's. But anyway, to cut a long story short, I got better, and as I got better, I got a bit on a power trip. So I had to keep being brought down to earth a number of times. So when you get brought down to earth a number of times, first of all, from the first instant, then all the other instances, now it's just like, I got to learn some more. It never stops. You never stay stationary in life. David Goggins in his latest book was quite interesting. He talks about that you never get to stay in one spot ever. You're either declining or you're getting better. And even to stay in that one spot, you got to keep working really, really hard. You don't get a choice. You can't just relax and think you know it all or whatever, or your skills are going to stay the same. So yeah, I'm very conscious on keeping myself really stable and just building myself all the time. Yeah.
Very good. Once again, I can hear in that entire story, I wrote down your 3 principles as reading the horse correctly, then influencing them, and self-awareness, and all elements right there on display. Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bay or sorrel?
Oh, give me a nice bay. Oh, I don't care really any color, but I do love there's nothing, a real nice bay. Like a real nice bay is a real pretty horse, but yeah, any color. Any color.
The predisposition to bay horses continues. You wouldn't believe it's 85-90% people picking bay. I thought it'd be 50-50. It is not even close to 50-50. Definitely there is.
You know why?
Preference for bay horses.
I bet you any money is because it's such a common color, but we've all had a nice bay horse, haven't we? So, not saying I've got nice chestnuts as well, but yeah, I've had some pretty special bays.
When you meet a set of twins, do you ever have the urge to tell them that at least one of them was unplanned? You will next time, won't you?
Yeah, or who was like, there's always that debate amongst twins about who was born first, and the one's going, well, the other one, I couldn't wait for the other one to, be born. So, they're too lazy. You had to come out first. And, the other one will say, yeah, but you were so hopeless, I had to push you out because you weren't going to be able to do it yourself.
Dogs or cats?
Oh, I'm a dog person. I'm a dog person, but I do love my cats. So, yeah, but I'm a real dog person.
What breed is your preference?
I like big dogs. Not little dogs. I'm a big dog person. I got 2 Mastiff crosses.
Okay. Big dogs.
Yeah, big dogs. Big dogs. I love them. Yeah, I see they've got to do a bit of a nothing against little lap dogs and stuff, but I like them to be able to do a job, do a purpose, even if that's just being the guard for the property, or make people think twice about coming in your property when you're not there.
Does pineapple belong on pizza? I don't know if this is an Australian thing or not. That's a pretty controversial topic here in the U.S. So do y'all have pineapple pizza there? Oh,
we do. It's called the Hawaiian. We call it the Hawaiian over here. It's controversial here as well, but I'm like a nice bit of pineapple on a ham or bacon pizza, as we have over here too, is quite nice.
Are you a cook?
Yeah, no, I love cooking. I love cooking with my partner, my current partner. Yeah, we love cooking together. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have a favorite meal to cook?
No, just anything. We really like cooking, like something new. At the moment, we're on this. We listened to this podcast the other day about this, guy that's an expert in gut and nutrition, and he set us this task of trying to eat 30 different plant stuff, whether it be veggies, fruit, seeds, etc., per week. 30 different ones. So we're having fun doing that this week. Every time Simon puts something down, he goes, that was 8 different plants. So we're keeping a total. Yeah. So yeah, we love doing it.
That's pretty interesting. A little diversity of forages there, huh?
Yeah, well, that's what this guy reckons. That's from all his studies and research.
So would you say that you know more about your horse or your partner? So I guess basically what I'm saying is that the insight of the intricacies, people or horses, which one do you think you have a better bead on?
Oh, this is a great question. So horses are easy, right? Horses are easy, beautiful, the most gentle, trainable creature on the planet. That's why I tell people the more I get to know them, even the toughest horse I've ever worked with is still restraining itself 95%. So there's incredibly gentle animals. Very straight down the line too. Humans, I think it was Jordan Peterson described humans as a chimpanzee with a head full of snakes. Potentially with a head full of snakes. And it's like, that's a kind of a good way. We're a complex creature. Our mind, although we can design incredible technology and things like that, it's a complex piece of work. And I think we strive our whole life to be like a horse, not to have that impacting us so much. Look, I absolutely I love horses. I'm curious as hell of them. Actually, I always wanted to know why, what is it? What made you and I have the horse bug? What do you reckon? What made you fall in love with horses?
I think there's always that romance element to it. That's something that just attracts you to them. And then in my experience, most of the people that are pretty serious about horses tend to be pretty introverted people. So they feel safer and more comfortable with animals than they do with people. For the most part, animals, for whatever reason, don't drain your battery like people do. And so that becomes a place of comfort. And then you start to notice, because you're sitting there quiet, not like these extroverts, just sending ripples out into the world and messing everything up. We're sitting there quietly and observing things. And then you start to see that there's more complexity here than you began to realize. And it becomes a puzzle, and you pull the string and it's just unraveling and unraveling. And there you have your own puzzle that smells great, is big, is warm, is fuzzy, and you train them to do something, and the rapport begins to develop, and you really have this true relationship. I mean, what's not there to appreciate and love, So
yeah, no, I love that. And it's so true how people get connected to animals, because they're like a safer option sometimes, because they're so honest. They don't change. They're more reliable than some humans they might be around. That's so true. I used to say, so my answer to that when I pondered it, it's like, maybe we're all related to that first crazy person that decided to ride them. Maybe there's some genetic element to it. And then I read a lot. Okay, I'm always reading, and I discovered that humans, one of our human traits is that we're biophilic, which is a very interesting trait amongst all other species. Is that we're intensely interested in other living creatures. And it's like, okay, so I'm biophilic and I happen to be, then your thing kind of kicks in. Is that the animal that intrigued me the most was the horse, really, really got my attention. And I agree, it probably comes from that, from how you're indoctrinated. There's symbols of the horse everywhere, and stories were told as kids and things like that. So I agree. So yeah, so horses I find fascinating, but also easy. Humans, whoa. Humans are just as fascinating. In fact, my PhD is in human learning, and people think, when they see I'm a doctor, first of all, they think I'm a doctor, and it's like, well, I am a doctor. I got a PhD, but I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a pharmacist. But in my academic career, I got encouraged, because I was really good at teaching, is to go into medical education, which I did. And then, yeah, just really fascinated how people learn and develop expertise, especially the thinking skills you need to be a professional in health. the critical thought and stuff like that, because a whole lot of universities and stuff talk about that they teach people to critically think, but then actually when you look at what they actually do to teach critical thinking, they don't actually do it. So I kind of researched that. And yeah, so I became an expert in human learning, but how humans learn to develop expertise. And so humans very, very, very much fascinate me. I can tell you that every human being is born with the ability to be as good as they want. It's just the kind of the moons and the situation and the environments they're in, the people you come across depends about how well that you can be that shining diamond that all of us are born a diamond, and how much mud we get thrown at us or the opportunities we get given. Personally, for me, I got a hell of a lot of opportunities. And I know I'm very, very fortunate from the family that I come from, the sport, that what I try to do is give that back, is that I know I'm very, very lucky for how I've been able to achieve. So humans really intrigue me massively. How they learn about horses, now that is the most fascinating thing that I find. Yeah.
So there's a couple of things that I kind of have seen as a pattern with a lot of horse people, that you say almost all of the professionals that I know, unless they were raised in it and they're the fourth generation rancher type,
yeah.
but almost all of the people that are like you or me have a problem horse in their background, and generally speaking, that horse was dangerous. It wasn't just that we had some inconvenient things. It was like I could die at any minute for a 3-year period until I finally got to the other side of it. And next thing you know, you're a professional. It's like that's the path to being a professional trainer.
Yeah.
And then we also tend to have maybe a different outlook on risk than most people do. I think that's part of it. If you're too risk averse, you're going to find something else to do. You're not going to stay with this very long. So we're talking about animals. Like if I'm walking along and a snake comes by, I have to catch it. If there's we went and did a trip to England, I'm out there messing around trying to catch a swan on the side of a lake behind a castle, and my wife is yelling at me. If there's animals around, I'm going to get in trouble in some way, shape, or form. Going, I'm going to die one day trying to pet something I should not have tried to pet. So anyway, that's commonality for us. Also,
Go on.
I was just going to say, we were talking about the complexities of figuring people out. I mean, one of your big deals there was self-awareness. People don't even have themselves figured out for the most part. And so how the hell do we know what's in that other person's brain over there? I don't even have control of what's going on right here inside between my own ears, much less whatever Cheryl's doing over there, so.
That's right. And we, it's really interesting how people learn how to think. So look, when we grow and we develop, we actually, with our reasoning, how we learn to reason things, first of all, it's just, when we're real little, everything's just a fact. Then you learn there's opinions, right? Then you learn that's opinions. And you always know that's when kids are going through adolescence and stuff like that, they develop awareness that that's just your opinion. But the type of reasoning we use is that, we're all born with what we call intuition. Like a gut feeling on something, and people kind of put that on a pedestal, but you got to be a bit careful with that, because your intuition is also where your biases or your misinformation and bad thoughts about things also live. Intuition is good once it's trained. So your intuition of a horseman would be very, very good. So you trust your gut, but if you're not so good, then you're going to guess wrong, right? Or you're going to feel wrong. The next level is your emotional reasoning, how you feel, how something feels. So most people are walking around judging things based on how something makes them feel, okay? And that's most. We actually don't ever evolve to a higher level than that in terms of our reasoning. We don't. You have to learn that extra layer, that rational ability to think, using logic, using a mix of your intuition, your emotions, and outside facts and things like that, to actually, you got to learn how to do that. We don't do that naturally. We actually have to learn from a mentor. Someone in your life has taught you to think really well. And I can tell by the way you write, okay, things you write and how you talk. So what I did for my PhD, right, is that when a PhD, I wanted to see if I could help people learn how to critically think. How could I do it? And I went and researched and found out that I went a health person, and I went to law, because law teaches people how to do arguments, right? So, right, I'm going to teach people how to think by teaching them how to do arguments. So I'd set them a scenario up, I'd ask them how to handle it, and I get them to write it down. Then what I did is I had to score them and work out what kind of reasoning they were actually using. Then I'd teach them how to argue, and then I'd re-look at how they actually approached it. And it was pretty cool. But what I do whenever I read anyone's stuff, I just I just naturally, because I've done it so much with my research, I just analyze it. And you use very complex thinking. So you can see the ability of people to actually reason, okay, and what information they take in and what line so just say that essay you wrote yesterday about the concept of abuse. That is the beautifully layered example of, all that type of reasoning mixed into one. So, yeah.
Thank you. I'm sitting in my office chair feeling naked right now all of a sudden, but anyway, I appreciate that.
But you can see it. And you can see it also. Social media is just one big, discovery for me, is you can see the different lines people take. But, yeah, people they're complex. They're complex things, and how they learn about the horse and things like that is a journey you've got to go on. And have you ever heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So the Dunning-Kruger effect, it's a real human, and unfortunately, it's how we're wired. We are wired to be overconfident. It's a survival thing. If humans weren't overconfident, okay, and prone to doing stupid things, we wouldn't be here. You need that overconfidence to be able to get out of that cave millions of years ago, even though you had things that could kill you, to go and have a crack at doing a hunt. Because humans are very good at working things out, but we got to fail a lot. And if we're so risk adverse, we never do anything. And we kind of know that you need that little bit, a bit to go. So the Dunning-Kruger effect, that those that don't know, that it's kind of the summation of the less you know, the more you think you know. So the less
on average, most people believe themselves to be above average.
Yeah. They do. Yeah, they do. And it's interesting. The more you know, the less you rate yourself, that's how it goes. And the Dunning-Kruger effect is, it's your confidence over what you actually know. And there's a big peak. When you know little, you got this really high confidence, and then it starts plummeting down. Well, that peak is called Mount Stupid. So, I was on Mount Stupid for a long time, and I was on Mount Stupid for most of my life, without knowing it, thinking I was pretty good before crashing down. And what I say, how you were saying how we all have that horse in that horse that started it out. Mine was Scooter. What was your horse called? What was their name?
Duke. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yep.
See, and what I say to people is just that's a gift from the horse gods. When the horse gods know you're ready, they'll send you one to humble your ass. Okay? That you got a choice. And this is the choice. The horse gods do this, right? Horse gods, right? Okay. We've sent you horses so you fall in love with us and you're intensely curious about us. And you might think that you know us, but we're going to show you you don't. So we're going to hand you Duke or a Scooter that's going to humble your ass and frustrate the hell out of you. And you got a choice. You can either work that horse out, okay, or you can give it back, get rid of it. But guess what? We're going to send you another one until you decide to take us up on the challenge. You're either going to walk away or you're going to take us up on the challenge. And then what I found with the horse gods, they'll throw me another one. It's here you go, here you go, here you go. So, yeah, that's the horse gods. They humble your ass. Never, ever think you know the horse, okay, because the horse gods will humble your ass.
Absolutely. Just your experience with the Brumbies out there. You've already got decades, and all of a sudden you're like, how did I not know this, right?
I know. It's so weird when you do you ever think about that? And this is why I really understand, and I'm very, very patient with people that don't get it. It's really weird when you have never, you can only see or know. Your reality is constructed by what you know, right? And if you don't know it, it doesn't exist. It does not exist. And it's really revealing. So just say, after I had the scooter incident and worked out that it was me and I was doing something that was upsetting the horse, my next big incident was not a horse that really troubled me. It was that I troubled a horse. I had Scooter that scared the hell out of me, but I had a lovely little cob that tolerated me. But he had a really hard mouth. And I'd spent all this time finding the bit, to fix the hard mouth. And then one day in a lesson, I was struggling. I was doing dressage, and I was struggling with him with flying changes because he'd change, but then he'd take off, like he'd bugger off. And like I couldn't pull him up. So it wasn't going to be a real nice dressage test. Every time I did a change, he'd just take off. And I couldn't pull him up because he was hard-mouthed. Anyway, in one of the sessions where we're working through this, he also used to have a galloping amount of foam that would come out of his mouth. And all the people that I was paying to give me lessons all told me that was a real good sign. That was a good sign of a good mouth. Anyway, during this particular lesson, all that foam turned bright orange. And it stopped, and it took me a couple of seconds to work out what had happened. And I hadn't ripped his mouth. He'd bitten through his mouth here because I'd traumatized him so much. He'd bitten through and his mouth was bleeding. And that rocked me. That rocked my world. And I had to get off, even though the coach is going, why? What's the matter? And it's just like, I can't. I was sickened because back then, I had to see blood to know that I was hurting a horse. I had to see that level of harm to a horse. Now I can just see it when it's walking towards me, how uncomfortable the poor animal is. It was that, and I just remember driving home from that coaching session going, if that's dressage, I don't want to do it. Like, if that's what I have to do to a horse, I don't want to do it. Then that did something to me that rattled my world. So I think two things happened. I had a horse that scared the crap out of me. That rattled me, made me frustrated. But this horse rattled me to a place of like really pondering myself. And the next day, YouTube was going off in the background, like YouTube. And I heard someone in a cowboy hat that I'd never looked at before, ever, took no notice because the silo of dressage was strong. And they said this, they said, there's no such thing as a hard-mouthed horse. And of course, my ears pricked up. There's a horse that's just resistant to pressure and habituated to pain. And then proceeded just to show lateral flexion. And I was like, Anyway, I went and got my horse, saddled him up, made sure his mouth was okay. But I remember I sat there and I picked up this rein, and he turned his head the other way. And it blew my mind. It was like, oh my God, you don't know what the bit means. Like, oh my God, you don't understand that. And in 45 minutes, just from one idea, the horses learned from the release of pressure that I would be able to quote to you, but obviously didn't get. I had a soft-mouthed horse. 45 minutes off one idea. That blew my brains. Anyway, the bad thing is that you got to understand I was an expert in learning. See, I'm worse than most normal people, right? Because I had this big, complicated background in understanding learning, yet it had never crossed over into horses. So that moment, it's like my worlds collided, because that's what happens to you in life, especially when you've done something as a kid. You silo your information. So everything I knew and understood about learning was not, even though I was really good at learning, I had never transferred that information to horses ever until that moment. And that blew my mind. Yeah. So that horse then, again, showed me not only how I am and how I act around a horse is important, but also how to know whether they understand something or not. And you know what? I worked out that I'd spent about $30,000 to $40,000 on riding lessons and coaching, because I was one of those, professional people that, had a career, that had the horse, that went off to all the fancy coaches and stuff like that. Not one person had ever done that test. They had just recommended another bit, or, got me to drive him into the contact and all these types of things. And the poor little horse didn't even understand. One idea, 45 minutes and I solved it myself. That blew my mind.
I like it. That's going to give us a lot of things to talk about later on in this conversation here. I have a lot of notes.
Cool.
Do you have?
Sorry, can I ask you that question? What was your breakthrough thing? If mine was making a horse's mouth bleed, what was yours? What was your big eye-opening? It's just like, oh my God, I never saw that before. Now I can't unsee it.
I don't know that I had a singular moment like that. I definitely have some story. There was a particular stallion whose tongue I cut when I was still an apprentice trainer. It was a little different. He was running away and bucking with me in a pasture with hills, and I was trying to pull on one rein and get him stopped. And I did eventually get him stopped, but I had the pink mouth at that moment too, and I was riding him with a twisted wire snaffle and had cut his tongue almost in two, which I had no idea had happened in the course of the ride. But you get adrenaline, fear, cortisol, and all that stuff going on, and you black out for 30 seconds, and next thing you know, here you are, right? So I really don't know. I've definitely have mellowed out more over the years. The perspective changes. I definitely had, so kind of what you were talking about, Mount Stupid there. To me, that's a stage that all young trainers go through when you're 23, 25 or something. You figure desensitizing out usually to me is the thing, and all of a sudden you can do scary stuff on a colt on the third ride, and you think you've got this whole thing figured out, and you get really arrogant, and you're just, you can see it. All of the rest of us that are older see coming from a mile away that the rug is going to shortly be pulled right out from under you, and you're going to be on your butt, and we'll just see about that. But I would say that with the bit journey, which happened to me very much by accident, I do have a background in engineering, so I think I have a perspective on bits a lot of people don't have. I understand physics in a way most people don't understand, and so I did some YouTube videos on that, and they were very, very successful, and I decided to capitalize on it. And one of my biggest fears is to put like a video or something out there and then look at it 10 years later and realize how wrong I was, that the cringe factor. And so when I decided to really capitalize on it and do the video, I decided I better do my homework and kind of back up every little thing and make sure that, what I was going to say was utterly beyond reproach. Part of that was really delving into body language of horses on a pretty micro level. And it's actually a warning I give in my lectures right now. I kind of say it a little tongue in cheek, but once I point these 20 things out to you and you start looking for them, you're going to start seeing them everywhere, and you're not going to be able to not see them. And that's kind of the world to me now. Yeah. It takes a lot less than blood to be an orange billboard of dysfunction in this horse. So there's just a lot of stuff I can't watch anymore because of what I see. So so it wasn't a one particular horse or one particular incident. I think it was kind of a cumulative thing, and it probably happened so slowly I didn't recognize that it was happening. But as I look at where I am right now and what I see and what I could tolerate or stomach versus 15 years ago, I'm in a different universe now than what I was then. So
the evolution of your reality.
So this probably could be a book in and of itself, but do you have a horse industry related pet peeve you'd like to share with us?
I suppose my I've got a lot, and it's like I battle them. And it's like I used to be the biggest equestrian vigilante. Like, you don't want to take me on the keyboard warrior status. It's like, I've got to save the world. You're all doing it wrong. And then I realized, because there was lots of things that just, really piss me off. And I run into them all the time with clients. There's a lot of bad advice out there flying around at the moment that really can stuff people up, and I'm against that. And it's like, I put down my vigilantism because I worked out I wasn't changing anyone's opinion. The way to do it was just to keep going forward, just keep. And when those people came, when they need me, they come. And it helps straighten them out. But I suppose, the reliance on or thinking there's such the horse is the problem focus. So me with Scooter being a pharmacist, how do you reckon when I had this horse that was sensitive and worried about the world, what do you reckon I did, Daniel? What do you reckon the pharmacist did? How do you reckon I treated that horse?
Did we maybe pharmaceutically help him a little bit there or no?
Yeah, because there was something medically wrong with him. He had generalized anxiety or something like that. So it's just like, where's the pill? Where's the potion? Where's that? Where's that going to put down his throat? So looking at him as the problem, and that's, so there's that's out there everywhere, and it's kind of rife. Horses that struggle to do things, it's their problem. The whole world's directed towards how we can fix the horse, when really I'm about, well, how about we skill you up so you can help that horse, or get that horse more comfortable. The other pet peeve that I have is that it's kind of like there's a lot of bad advice out there that's almost reverse engineering people off their horses to just hanging on to them with the lead rope, and this passive thing of thinking that we stand there singing kumbaya to our horses, that that they'll realize that we're lovely, loving creatures that love them a lot and therefore relax. Yeah, there's a lot of horse torture going on out there, that when by actually doing the opposite of overt abuse, they're actually doing this kind of hardcore kind of emotional shutting down restraint of a horse without realizing it. That is causing a lot of problems and a lot of dangerous situations. So I'm actually coming across the most dangerous situations I'm coming across, and saddest situations with horses, is ones that have had humans that have been trying very hard to do the right thing, but have become so passive with their horse and so concerned about how the horse feels and thinks and wants to do, that they're actually creating incredibly, incredibly stressed and dysfunctional horses. So this is the war that I wage, that they're, imposing human trauma over the horse and things like that. And it is just doing some pretty diabolical stuff. Getting people hurt, getting horses in terrible situations, and leading people down a terrible rabbit hole that might seem morally superior, but it is terribly flawed. So I stand against that. And I know, reading your stuff and other stuff, it's like there's this silent agreement between trainers. It's just like we're all out there saying, hey, they're horses, they need to move, we need to do things, they need to understand us, they need to know how to follow us, you need to show them how to navigate us. This passive kumbaya stuff is really not doing the horse or you a disservice. Yeah. How's that?
I could not agree more. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
There's a lot we could do a whole episode on just that topic, I think. Yes, ma'am.
We could. Yeah. I'll tell you a quick story, right? So a client that I had to unpick from that, I went and visited her a little while ago, and we were at her tie-up bay. The horse has been going really, really super well. When I met the horse, she said was terribly aggressive. Every time she asked to do something, it would attack her. Anyway, we're standing there at the tie-up rail, and at the tie-up rail, there was all these rocks, right? And it was just really weird. And I was looking at them, and she looked at me looking at them, and she goes, do you want to know why I put those rocks there? And I was like, why? She goes, because Dougal, her horse, when she tied him up, used to spend the entire time striking out at those there. So she put that there as kind of a deterrent, so he wouldn't kick the, wall of a shed in. It's just like, how bad's that? Anyway, I got a million and one of those stories. So, anyway.
Well, that leads us well into the next question. Feral or spoiled, which would you rather deal with? And you've already said you haven't really dealt with a truly
not a
feral
truly
or wild horse.
I think, though, that part of me would say yes, because it's just like I've got some really good friends in America. I really rate them. They're really awesome, and they're very inspiring with their wild horses. So I'd be very intrigued of working out with the wild horse. However, I deal a lot with I don't know, maybe you could call it spoilt, but I really don't call them spoilt. They're just tortured souls. That's what I find. They're just in an actual state of learned helplessness. Really, those spoilt horses, they're in terrible conflict and chaos. That's what I call them. They're really not spoilt. They're actually tortured. So yeah, I'm a bit of an expert at dealing with those poor creatures and their poor owners that are thinking they're doing the right thing.
There's plenty of job security there, no doubt.
Yep.
What is your least favorite barn chore?
Stacking hay, by far. Stacking the hay or clipping a horse. Both those things are itchy.
Okay.
Both those things are itchy. Yeah. But otherwise, I love doing stables. Oh, mucking out stables. I know that's really weird, but I find it zen, right? It's just like cleaning the stable. There's something very like you can just think, you can listen to something while you're doing it. It's a brainless task. And then there's that beautiful before and after mess and then clean. I don't know. There's something about that's really cool.
Tangible reward, instant gratification, just enough busy work to clear your mind up and give you. Yep, I totally see the attraction of it for sure. So I guess that's your favorite barn chore. What is the best smell in the barn?
Oh, horses, just the smell of the horse and leather. That mix of like walking into the tack room. I always love that, the smell of leather, but also the smell of horses. That's really nice. But it's like lately, unfortunately, though, they smell different. And now I'm realizing you can smell what's wrong with them. So it's like, funny smell. You start realizing that. Yeah.
Nutritional side of things and all of that.
Yeah, nutritional, their gut health, how good their lungs are, things like that. You can smell a lot on them. But still burying your head into the mane of a horse kind of thing, that beautiful smell, that's very addictive, as they say. Yeah.
Favorite horse-related words of wisdom?
Oh, yeah, I've got a lot of those. Now I can't remember one of them.
Well, I'll say this while you think.
Yeah.
I love sort of the one-liners, the words of wisdom. So I keep the smartphone has been one of the greatest inventions for me because it has the voicemail recorder and then the notes. And I'm constantly taking notes because these thoughts come out of my head and they're like sparks in a campfire. That's going to be gone in 5 seconds if I don't get it down on something right now. So I have a folder in my phone called Arena Sayings, and my dream is to have a big, beautiful arena with words of wisdom kind of on every little section around there, so that as I'm writing, I am surrounded by these kind of words of wisdom that have passed me, or some of them are jokes and, but I could see myself on this troubled horse working hard. And then I finally get to that spot and we stop and I put them down and they lick and chew and I look up and boom, there's the perfect saying that I need to keep in mind was sitting there on the wall right in front of me the whole time. That's my romanticized version of words of wisdom. So I bought you a little time. Have you thought of something now?
Yeah. I've got a few. So I've got a few that I say myself. Okay. But I've got, the horsemanship sayings. I say them a lot. I probably say, do less sooner. That one, the good old classic. I don't know, was that a Ray Hunt or a Bill Dorrance? Do less sooner. Trying to get people to understand that you don't have to wait for the horse to, to buck or do something like that. You just, horses give you lots and lots and lots of warnings about things. You can see it happening. Do less sooner. My own ones though is look up and ride somewhere. That's something if I had to just give one piece of advice to all horse people out there, it's like look up and ride somewhere. And you want to know, I've got to tell the story how I worked that out. You know how I told you about my partner, Gary, the really good horseman that really helped create me with a lot of patience and giving me a lot of horses and standing back and letting me do a lot of failing, but being there to catch me if I asked him. Anyway, I started noticing things, like I was getting real handy with a horse. But if I was ever having a trouble with a horse, just say it was wouldn't relax or something like that, I'd just say, I would ask him to get on it, right? You rewrite it. Not because I wanted him to fix it. I wanted me to see him on that horse and that horse change by him doing nothing different from me, right? Because he could sit on any horse. He's really quite amazing. Probably the greatest horse handler on the ground that I've ever come across. He wasn't the most finesse rider, but he just would put horses into this zen-like. He'd get a horse. As soon as he sat on a horse, it was like it was the most bomb-proof horse that would do anything he asked, right? Anyway, of course, he'd get on the horse, and the horse, of course, wasn't worried about anything and totally relaxed. And then it spent me ages trying to unpick what the hell he was doing, like, what the hell are you doing? And then I realized it mustn't be anything he's doing, because we were no different in what we were doing, right? And then I started must be something he's thinking. Anyway, I remember I asked him, I go, what are you thinking about when you ride? And he looked at me as if I was like, what? That's a really weird question. Anyway, he thought about it and he looked at me and he says, well, I'm riding over there. That's it. And he goes, you thinking anything else? He was like, no. So anyway, I got on, cleared all my thoughts and just rode, just looked up and just rode somewhere and bang, it's like, there you go. Here's me with all my bloody 20, it's like the woman's brain going around with 6 billion thoughts, just narrowing it down to that one beautiful, simple thought. So my whole body was aligned in that thought, because that's what the horse is reading, underneath you, aligning your thoughts, going one way, you suck them into that. And that was like, that's it. So look up and ride somewhere. I say that a lot. The other thing I say is use your circles wisely. Horse only has so much circles in it before they become destructive than constructive. So you got to make good decisions about your circles and how many you use and what you do, and don't just waste them because you're being neurotic and have to do your 20 minutes of groundwork before you get on them. You got to have good evidence for a reason why you use a circle, why you waste a circle in that horse's circle bank.
I love that. Yes, ma'am. I would say when you're talking about Gary there, I don't know if you've worked with young kids very often, but kids are way easier to teach than adults are, because if you ask a kid to pick up your left hand, they pick up their left hand. If you ask an adult to pick up their left hand, they do that and 9 other things. And you're like, hey, whoa, I didn't say this, and this. And they are just incapable of doing the simple thing and nothing else. And that's maybe the hardest concept to get across to them, that it's just this. It's not all the other stuff,
Yeah, there's a few reasons, especially with because most of my clients are women, and I can relate to them, because the more you've used your mind as a job, right, the more you get disconnected from your body, right? And they actually get mind-body disconnect. So they don't even know. They might have thought they've put up their hand, but they're not realizing everything, because there's this disconnect that's happened because they've been so worked in their mind, they're not actually conscious of what's going on in their body. And that's, of course, what causes a lot of problems with people, is that horses read the feelings that you either give them directly or indirectly. But when you're given random stuff all the time and you don't even know you're doing it, then that's the problem. The other thing about women and men, because I find women and men different to coach as well. Men are more direct blind thinkers. You tell them to do something, they do it. But females, we are programmed to look for risk, way more bigger picture than men. So, and especially if a woman has been made to feel vulnerable with a horse because they've lost their confidence and they've lost their sense of competency and reliability in a horse, then, of course, their mind, good old mind, the thing that we can build airplanes with that causes us so much problem, starts identifying all this risk. And it's, working with people to allow them to have that thought where they can just look up and ride somewhere. And they can just do that without this noise, because they're not even conscious that they're doing it. Yeah.
Self-awareness.
Yeah, so you got to learn to be I tell people, you got to learn to be a Tai Chi computer program with a horse. So, so working with a horse does the same benefit that martial arts does, that mind, body, spirit thing of martial arts. Horses make you do that as well. You have to be in your mind, and your body cannot be separate. If you've spent in your career being paid to be very good at thinking and doing skills with your mind, you have to get your body back involved, because the mind just takes over and dominates, and you become unconnected. And that's where you become random and do 9 different things when you've asked to pick up your left hand. Yeah.
I think you've probably already done this a few times, but would you tell us something unexpected about you?
Wow. Well, I'm obsessed with candles. You should see all the candles I've got. It's like, I love it. It's really weird. Like, it's almost, and especially if I ever get in a funk. I don't know about you, Daniel. Do you ever get like writer's block or anything? Like, you just can't get your thoughts. Mm-hmm. I'm very prolific with writing and kind of recording my thought and having ideas and researching. But sometimes, I suppose, when I get really tired, because I do a lot of travel and that really knocks me about, is that sometimes I'm kind of like, feel like I'm exhausted drunk, from just having my mind pulled 16 different ways and physically tired, that I get a little bit of burnout, I suppose. But yeah, I discovered it by accident. Someone gave me a candle, and it was something about the smell was able to so I always have nice fragrance. So this is a very nice vanilla. Actually, it was a lime and coconut. I was wrong. Lime and coconut candle. Very nice.
So I will actually admit that here in my office, I have a candle warmer, and I actually also, you're the first person I've ever heard say that, but I definitely find if there's a comforting scent in the room, it makes it easier for me to like zone in and concentrate and knock out whatever project I'm trying to work on. Yep. So
yeah, no, true. And I've even been doing experiments. So I've gone on to the aroma smells or whatever in the aromatherapy thing. I'm doing some experiments. This one's called Focus. And then I've got this one, which is Bliss. There's a whole collection of them. Check this out. And I'm going to just show you there the whole collection of the different smells kind of thing to see if is there something that makes me more prolific than normal? More nerdy than I already am? Anyway, that's something random about me.
So ties in well with our next question. If there are good essential oils, do you think it's fair to say that there must also be evil essential oils?
Oh, maybe. There's probably some smells that can really put you off. I know smells that disgust me are designed to make you step away.
Uh-huh. Stephen King is not smelling vanilla in the background when he writes those books, right?
No,
it's something else for sure.
No, that's something else there. Yeah, that human intrigue, those snakes, the chimpanzee with a head full of snakes that likes the distraction of horror, because it's easy to capture a human's attention by focusing on the negative or something scary. We're very drawn to that. Looking at the car crash on the freeway, we can't stop it.
Thoughts or feelings? Do you consider yourself more that intuitive, go by the gut, I don't know why, but I'm going to do it anyway person? Or are you more of the cerebral, thoughtful, I need a practical, logical reason behind this before I'm going to take action on it? What type are you?
I think you can't be. I think either gets you into trouble. I think, as I said, part of being self-aware, and I said you need those realms to do a good job. It's all good being impulsive, right? Impulsive and going with your gut, but only if your gut's got good training. So you got to be able to back your gut. And most people have a gut that's programmed by their interactions with people, and that can actually get them in trouble with a horse. It's actually that feeling of not wanting to upset a horse or whatever that gets them into trouble. However, those people that I come across that are drawn to me because they see me as being scientific and stuff like that, or being really nerdy, that try to train a horse by reading by reading scientific papers, get themselves into trouble. Working with a horse is an art and a science, and you need both. And I've trained myself to to do both. I've trained my intuition, so I really go with my gut. It's like, I don't know about you, Daniel. Do you like, you're working with a horse and it's like I have this flip file in my brain of so many horses that I've worked. It was like I'll look at one horse and bang, another case will come that was very similar, and I kind of follow my feelings of different cases that I've worked with before. Or I'm also very good at going, whoa, haven't seen that before. You know, being identifying if it's new and slowing down. Then I know, you know, whoa, just pull back. I might need to think about this a little bit more. So knowing when to going with your gut or your feeling, or when to actually lay a card down and take a risk with a thought, you know. So I'm going to answer it that way. I'm going to sit on the fence, I'm afraid.
I totally agree. It's almost like speed limits or something. Here, I know where I'm at here. This is the interstate. I can go super fast. This is easy. There's no roadblocks ahead.
Yeah.
Versus, oh, this is a curvy up and down road. I had better slow down and take it slow and careful right now, and really pay attention and not listen to the radio at this moment, right? So, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have a favorite piece of tack or horse-related tool?
Oh, yeah. I'm neurotic about wearing gloves. That's another weird thing about me. I always wear, except there's some things that I have to touch a horse for, of course, with my hands. However, I always work a horse with gloves on, and it's for a very weird reason, because I'm very good at working with horses. I've got very good rope skills. But way back in my past, I got rope burn, right? I got rope burn and it wasn't the rope burn that pissed me off. It was the fact that I did a bad release. It made my timing crap. And, you know, and doing that really well and it is really important to me. So it's like I will always wear my gloves. I wear special gloves. They're light gloves. They're not heavy or thick leather gloves or anything like that. They're quite light gloves, but I refuse to let rope going through my hand a little bit quick be some reason for me not to do a good release. So I'm neurotic about wearing my gloves. So whenever I've got my little kit bag and stuff, of course, that I take to clinics, and it's always like, are my gloves there? My gloves there. And the other thing that I use is my rope holder, and I use the rope holder with the double knots on the noseband. No. And you see, and people go, oh, that's, you know, it's just nasty pressure and stuff like that. And it's like, no, I can control that pressure like a surgeon, you know, but I'm this small woman and I want to be able to very effectively be able to control the pressure that I apply to that horse. And those little bits that are working on that, that sensitive part of the horse's face, that's absolutely, I want to get in there. I want to create that meaning, and I want to get out as soon as possible. And that halter allows me to do that very effectively and quickly, so the chaos is over.
I totally understand that. I will say that you and I are polar opposites on the gloves, though. It bugs me to no end to have. I have to have the tactile sense of everything.
Yeah, so I know.
Like if I'm on an old broke horse where I'm just going to be riding and there's no groundwork, and we don't need to have this big cathartic release of me scratching him on the neck and all, then I can handle the gloves. But if it's like a colt or a problem horse and I need to get in there, I cannot stand to have gloves on for that.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, I know that, because that's really common, because people go, you wear gloves, and it's just like, oh, I hate wearing gloves. And it's like, I know, it's like I am the opposite. But it's funny, because when I touch a horse, I like to touch them with my hand, right? Or if I'm doing things like doing up my tack, I like to use my hands. But as soon as I'm doing working with ropes and stuff like that, I put my gloves on. But I know that's peculiar, and that's why I know it's neurotic.
Well, like I would say, I used to not ever wear chaps or chinks or anything. And then when I started wearing them, now I can't hardly stand to ride without them. It's like my armor or my security. It gives me that layer, and I appreciate it there. So just different strokes for different, you know, I appreciate the feeling in one sense and don't like it in another. So
yeah.
If you had to pick between cold showers or cold food forever, which would you go with?
Oh, cold food. Definitely. Yeah, bugger that cold shower, even though in summer it's not too bad.
Right lead or left lead? Everybody kind of has a preference there. Do you feel a difference for yourself? You have to be a little more conscious or self-aware to go one way than the other?
Interestingly, under saddle, no. Don't have a preference. I've made myself as ambidextrous as I can. However, I suppose I should have said my number one tool that I like is the round yard. Like I'm very big in working horses in the round yard before everything, establishing that communication at liberty before I go put anything on them. And I'll always start that with the whip in my right. So I'll always go left lead first in the round yard, most typically. Yeah.
Okay.
Even though I just said I was ambidextrous, I'm going to go for the most effective, my most coordinated hand if I have to in the round yard. So left lead in the round yard.
Sweet, salty, or spicy?
Oh, salty. Totally like crisps or chips, as we call them here in Australia. Yeah. I'm a bit of a chip lover.
And then the last question for you, do you have a favorite dinosaur or deep sea creature?
Ooh. Not really a deep sea one. I think I think dolphins and whales and things like that are very fascinating creatures. Seals, things like that. I suppose anything that's kind of dog-like that gets drawn to the same level of curiosity. I have not a big fan of sharks. There's a lot of sharks where I've lived, whether it be in Western Australia, like at the local beautiful beaches, we had people taken by great whites and stuff like that. It wasn't regular, but it was not rare either. And of course, over here, also where we tend to holiday, there's like a big point of white. There's white pointers off there as well. So not a fan of the odd shark.
I can certainly understand that.
Yeah.
We have some bull sharks around my area. They're 5 or 6 feet, they don't really kill people, but they could take a chunk out of you or an arm or something here and there, but we don't have too many great white encounters. But that would make me think about getting into the water for sure if they were around.
Yeah.
Well, I am tabulating your score here, and it looks like you are fixing to be our reigning high score champion with a grand total of 3,810 points. So congratulations on that.
Excellent.
And that entitles you to either an awkward silence or a genuine compliment, your choice.
Oh, let's go the genuine compliment.
All right.
Compliment. I'll spit it out in a minute.
So a couple of the things that I noticed about you and really appreciated right away. One was that you obviously are still a student, and you seem to have sort of this is going to be a poor word choice. The right way to say it's not coming to mind, but you almost have this reinventing yourself sort of thing, like for instance the pharmacist, and then the PhD in human learning, and then the horse trainer, and so there are very clear evolutions of you. So you're not that stagnant person like David Goggins would say. You're continual growth and self-improvement and learning and self-awareness. So I find that very commendable. I also, from Canter therapy and your podcasts, and then you've got some really good videos on your YouTube channel. I wanted to point out you had a series on riding in contact and how to use your hands and so forth, and it showed a very deep level of thought to it, and a very practical aspect, and also taking, I would say, a subject that probably 90% of people get wrong, and you boiled it down to very simple, actionable things. And that's something that almost nobody has managed to do. So kudos to you on that. And then the Canter therapy, your podcast is also a very, I've enjoyed listening to it. I find it interesting. Y'all have some pretty cool conversations. And I would say it's also been the kind of thing where multiple times I have listened to the conversation and figured it was going to wind up here, and y'all wound up taken it to a different way, something I hadn't thought of before that was an interesting bend on this particular idea. And I always appreciate that when you have something that you don't expect that's kind of enlightening and allows other people to grow because it didn't go where you thought it was going to go. And so that'll be my compliment for you.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, well, I think we have revealed an awful lot in the lightning round there, but would you kind of give us the 30,000 foot view of what it is that you do these days?
What I do by complete and utter accident. It's got to remember that I never planned to do this. This is just evolved by severe accident. What I did was I was like, when I had my light bulb moments, my epiphany, my, come to Jesus moment when I worked out I could actually influence a horse and how to actually do it. I was only interested for my own benefit, like Gary, my partner, he was a farrier. So anyone that had a horse that was just laying around, he'd bring it home and I just play with it. So it didn't matter whether it was, a young horse that hadn't been started yet or an old decrepit 25-year-old broodmare, I just unpick them. So I was just this person that tinkered in the garage. People tinker on cars. Well, I just tinkered on horses and I just learned to unpick them. Then one day I went to watch a friend have a lesson with a quite popular local trainer. And it was just a place for us to meet up and watch her and a horse, and she had a new baby. And she had this lesson. And it was just real strange. For the first time I watched, and it's like I could tell that, one, the trainer didn't know what they were talking about because they weren't making any sense. And two, the horse didn't understand. And then there was this horrible moment. The horse was 5 years old and it was a Frisian cross. And I don't know much about Frisians, but Canter's not necessarily their gait. They've got to learn how to do it. They've got to have a bit more practice because of their breeding and stuff like that. Anyway, the horse was struggling to canter, and then the trainer got on it and belted this thing and just kept hitting him, and got to the point where it was even banging the sides of the indoor to try to scare the horse into canter. And it was clearly obvious the poor horse didn't understand what he wanted. And then there was this it was awful to watch. And then this worst thing, I never seen a horse shut down before. And this horse just stopped, just came to a stop in this quivering, covered with sweat mess, and just died inside, like it shut itself down. And the trainer was still hitting it, and it was just like, just kill me, like it just shut down. And it was the most disgusting thing I think I'd ever seen in my life. It was horrific because I could see. And that was the first time I'd looked at someone else training a horse or giving a lesson and realized I was at that point where I knew more than they did. So I helped. I just said to my friend, it's like, I think I can help you. She came over, and it took me, and this is a week later, poor animal. Anyway, a week later, it took me 10 minutes to teach that horse to canter. 10 minutes. Like, that was it. And then I helped another friend. Then I was helping their friends, and everyone was related to. And I was doing this crazy life where I was working full time in my job. I was doing my PhD at the time in my career. And every single evening I was working to 10 o'clock at night at an indoor, just helping people with their horses, and on the weekends, and every bit of annual leave that I had, I was giving clinics and that kind of thing. And I coached people and helped people, and for 2 years before I ever asked for any money, because I just used purely as like, these people were helping me get experience. Could I help this horse? I was testing myself, every horse. And if I come across a horse that was real bad, then I started hunting. Like, I want the rearer, I want the bucker, I want the horse that you can't float. I want them all, like, give me the toughest of the tough. And I just unpicked them to find out what was wrong with them. And then it was funny when I decided, I might as well get some money for it. And then it went ballistic. As soon as I hung the sign up, I didn't even have to advertise. In fact, I've hardly ever advertised. I just got inundated. And that's where I kind of got in this situation where one thing had to give. I was either going to dive in and do this thing full time, or, I just had to stick with my academic career. And well, it was more fun doing horses, so I decided to do that. So what do I offer? So what I offer is that I teach those realms. I teach people how to master, the mastery of the horse that they actually need. So there's this principle called the Pareto principle. Have you ever heard of that, or the 80-20 rule?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So what I worked out is that if you can start a horse, those skills that you use to start a horse are your 20% of your skills that account for 80% of things that you do with a horse. If you can start a horse, like you can do all the ground preparation, and then you can do those rides on them to establish, walk, trot, canter, turn, left, turn, right, stop, back up, get a bit soft in the bridle, that kind of thing, that everything else feeds into that. You control the influence of the horse. And you also means if you can do that well, you can make good decisions about that horse. So you can go to another trainer to add on to that in the discipline you pick, and you can know whether they're telling you something bad or not. So you're able to make good decisions for your horse. So I said about, teach people, I call it reboot their horse. Like they got to reboot it. Like I don't care what you bring, what trouble you bring with that horse. I don't care if it spooks, if it bucks, if it won't go on the trailer, whatever. I just restart it and I show them how to do it. And if I give them those skills, it sets them free. It absolutely sets them free to explore the horse world. I say this thing, if you're sitting there and you're thinking, I know everything, there's nothing that I don't know about the horse, I don't need any help, I'll ask you, can you teach a horse to get on a horse float or a trailer? We call them floats over here. Can you teach a horse to trailer? If I handed you a horse that had problems, would you be able to do that? And if your answer is a bit uncomfortable, I'm not sure, you're lacking some skills. These are the skills you need to have confidence in being. If you can put a horse on a horse float or a horse trailer and teach them how to do that and overcome any problems, then you've got a good basics of skills that then you can add on to finesse. So that's what I do. So I started off, I give clinics where I kind of showed that way of thinking and approaching problems was to go backwards, to go forwards, teach the horse this systematic way. Can a horse do this? Can a horse do that? And that gets a little bit of, there's this criticism about that, this cookie cutter approach of having this process that you train a horse. And that really perplexed me because you got to start somewhere. People go, the horse is an individual. You got to train them as an individual. And it's like, well, hang on, you got to be teaching them something to identify the individual. And anyway, it's just like, if I want to know whether that horse is sound or not, that horse shows me in the round pen going around, tells me I've learned how to see whether it's got something wrong with it from the get-go before I ever sit on it. So I teach people to go backwards and examine the horse, let the horse speak freely in that round yard, with no one on its back or whatever, and then build them from that, doing a sequence of simple things that you teach them. Because I discovered you don't have to teach a horse a lot of things. Like I know some programs have 56 groundwork exercises. Well, I worked out if I teach a horse 5 things, but got them to do it to a really, really high level, like really beautifully, that was the same. You can do your 56 exercises sort of okay, and that's great, you're there, but I can do 5 exercises, teach them really, really, really well and really beautiful, and bang, they're at the same level. So that's what I worked out, and that's what I go around giving clinics teaching this approach. I can also teach and add on and do higher level stuff as well, but most people they're presenting me with don't have their basics good enough. And then that gets the question of what are the basics? And my argument is that the basics is all the knowledge you use to be able to start a horse from scratch. They're your basics. So the basics for me, if you've got a canter problem, can your horse canter in the round pen with no one on it? That's where I start. Or can they even be caught in the paddock? How they're able to be caught. That tells you something as well. So that's what I advocate. When COVID came and shut me down from all my travel, it gave me the time to be able to establish my courses. So I was able to record. Now, I was a university academic. I built courses. Education was my thing of building programs. So COVID gave me that opportunity to scrounge through my phone footage and some other good footage that I'd taken and put together my courses and way of thinking of a horse. So that's why I've got the realms that I teach, things to know about horses, which is the understanding of the horse, that dimension, the skill set that you need on the ground and in the saddle of being able to influence a horse. And then that self-awareness one, which you've related to that book that I wrote about confidence and trust and that understanding of self. I've also got another course that I teach now, which is I actually teach people how to work horses. So my knowledge and skill of actually helping people navigate the human within the whole formula of the horse and the human is something that it's got bigger and bigger. So it's really interesting. So I take these cohorts into these most interesting equine professionals that are interested in improving the way that they can influence the human being. So I've gone into that side of things as well, which is being incredibly good fun. Yeah, so that's what I do. So I go around giving clinics, and then I've got my courses and building online communities and things like that of like-minded people, the sensible, safe approaches where I'm not a guru. I'm like fellow nerd that I take people for like the walk up the mountain, because I say learning to train a horse or work with a horse well is like learning to navigate up a mountain. There's millions of ways you can do it. I show you a path, the path that I worked out, and then that's that. The whole concept of mastery is that you learn from a master, learn from them, and then you can go and learn. Once you know a way up there, then go and explore other people's ideas. That's absolutely necessary, right? And then you become your own. You find your own way up the mountain. So I show people up the mountain. I take them on a bit of a tour up the mountain. I get them interested in how to identify, other realms or other people or other things to check out, so you can explore different avenues up the mountain. And then, to become themselves and enjoy that, the ultimate lifelong passion of horses. There you go.
I like it. I like your idea of keeping it simple, like your 5 things in groundwork. To me, that's like Albert Einstein's deal of, I think it was Einstein, if you can't explain something to a 6-year-old, you don't really understand it. Whenever I see these instructors, and like I have a pretty good bead on what's going around, and when I'm having a hard time following what you're explaining here, you're just filling the world with bullshit to make yourself seem smart. If you really understand what's going on here, you're going to make it simple for everybody, where even a kid could understand it. And the need to do that, I find that very common in like clinics. I have a simple test that I start every clinic with, and it is basically people get in a little semicircle around me, and I ask you to ride your horse forward to me 7 steps and stop on the 7th step. Would you like to guess the highest number of people out of 12 I've ever had that could walk forward 7 steps?
1?
It's 3, and that only happened in the last year. It was 2 for like 10 years. And I kind of find I mean, I've put on clinics where it's advertised specifically as being, we're going to work on lead changes, and then you find out that 8 of the 12 people don't know one lead from the other. How the hell am I going to teach you? It always comes back to the simple foundational. If you don't have that your hard mouth cob just needed to be pulled on with one rein and taught to bend, and then all of the problems magically went away, right?
Yeah, amazing.
People just don't want it to be simple, and it almost always is, right?
Yeah, I think they're used to being a bit bamboozled, because it's almost like a bit of gaslighting that goes on out there. And I worked out myself. See, once I got good, I was also competing, and I kind of worked out that my marks would go well if I got lessons from the people that go and get some coaching from the people that were going to be judging me, because dressage doesn't have the whole 3-month rule and things at some other sport. So I'd go and get some brownie points to do well in my competitions. And I just worked out, it was like people would be saying something completely. Have you heard of the acronym MSU? If I say MSU stands for making shit up, right? Mm-hmm. The instructor would be MSUing me, telling me to do this kind of thing. I'd be going, that's crazy. I'd just ignore it. Because I worked out if I just gave them 60 seconds, they then tell me, yes, that's it. You're doing it. Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like this gaslighting of almost, they're not quite sure what to do or frustrated or don't know how to do it. So they're doing all these things. And then I think it just used to being perpetually confused and frustrated. But yeah, you can pick someone. So again, as I said, I analyze what people write. You can write, if you can read, and you can pick up whether someone knows something really well or not by how clear the clarity is of how simply they can explain it. Yeah.
I completely agree. I think that, well, I don't know how things are in Australia, but in the US, kids are hardly writing anymore in school. And I think this is a Jordan Peterson thing, but it's absolutely true. Writing is thinking. If you are able to express thoughts clearly on a piece of paper and organize it in such a way that it makes sense to someone else, you can think. If you can't do that, how are you going to communicate in a world of adults and so forth? It's so incredibly important to do that.
Yeah.
So plus you get to edit it. It's the whole on the fly. Can't take these words back. Can't look at the dictionary or Google the synonym or whatever. Or when is it proper to use affect or effect or all these simple little things that I'm looking up all the time, right?
Yeah.
Anyway. So would you say, I was going to ask you for a little clarity when you and Gary, you had your epiphany moment. You were already deep into the world of human learning, human education at that point. So you kind of already had a framework you could superimpose this animal world. And this is actually, I hurried my compliment of you a little bit. This was one of the things I had planned to say if you had taken that option, was that I find our world in the equine industry seems to be getting a little more scientific. There's a whole lot more talking about this research and that research and
pseudoscience, Daniel. Yeah. Pseudoscience. It's MSU on steroids.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. And I find it scary because a lot of the research, if you actually do read the research, and first of all, reading research is a serious pain in the ass. That's not an enjoyable afternoon. It's 80 pages of statistics. Like if you've ever actually read any of those papers, much less dozens of them, it's not fun. That's work. It's really, your brain's going to be tired after you've trudged through that. Yeah. But also, almost all of the psychology stuff that we have and all is human research. It's not done specifically on horses. And so can we maybe learn something from that? We can, but it's pretty important to make the distinction that this isn't a direct, it's kind of theoretical that this might apply. We think that this makes sense and it appears, but we do not have an absolute pure fact numbers behind it that this works like this in the horse in 90% of these cases. There's some things that are research specific on a horse, but a whole lot of it is pulled from the human world. And I don't hear very many, I think you do this well, but not many people bother to say, oh, by the way, we think this is the way this works, but we're not 1,000% sure that, and I think that's important. It's part of the guru thing. I either want your blind allegiance or I'm genuinely trying to help you, but hey, it'd be great if we were both thinking critically on this because two brains are better than one, rather than you're putting me on some pedestal and I can't possibly be wrong. And my ego is a lot more important than the results we might get at the barn, so.
Yep.
Anyway.
Yep. No, I can totally relate to that. And I think what gets me is that I am very scientifically trained, right? And I've done higher degrees in research of how to conduct research. Yet because of that, I know what we don't know. And I also know how to read those papers and how you can't extrapolate that. You're actually not being a good scientist trying to extrapolate that case study. And a case study is only allowed to report on that small group, whatever that you've looked at under those conditions. You can't generalize that finding. So there's a lot of bad science, people putting that I'm science on their thing, but they're not actually doing science. The other thing I'll tell you about a scientist is that when you work in a realm of something practical, just say I come from the world of pharmacy, right, or health. I tell you what we do not what we do not disrespect, and that is the practical expert, the person that's out at the coalface that is doing it, that is working. Their knowledge, the practical expert's knowledge, is even higher than the academic person that's sitting there. The academic person's job is to sit and create the knowledge and validate and take information from the practical experts and look at it. It's the practical expert that's out there doing the job that is king. You know, they're the ones that when you do it, when you're working it, they're the ones that have the knowledge. But there's this academic snobbery out there that somewhere or other, if it's written in a paper somewhere or they did a paper, they're suddenly elevated higher. No, that's not good. That's not how research works. And we got to understand that there's science and then there's science, right? Very little of what we do with horses in terms of behavior is actually true science because it's behavior. So there's science is things that can be measured. And when it comes to behavior and psychology, it's not, it's social science. It's loose science. It's a different paradigm that you have to look at. It's bounded by different types of validity and reliability because there can be none because there's always subjectivity and you honor that. So you will see, and just for the fact that I use the word, I've stopped using the word train. I've tried to start using the word that we learn to influence horses. And if you think operant conditioning is the king and the only thing that works with horses and that this one's bad and that one's not bad, whatever, that's rubbish. So many things influence. Or the whole crew that jump up and down about dominance theory and there's no such thing and dominance is dead and all that type of thing. First of all, dominance is just a theory. First of all, just a theory, stuff that. But there is more to interactions of anyone or anything and any horse that is, it's more than one thing. It's complex interactions of influence. And sometimes there is domination within there. Okay, sometimes there is reward. It's complex mix. These people that try to pinpoint and label things as this and that are not doing good science. That's not science. The scientist is open-minded. They sit back and they listen and they watch and they understand that when you do a piece of research, your research has to be so put in a box for it to be research, right? That on many cases, you cannot take those results and put them out to the world as the gospel truth. It is not. It's tied to your box. Step away. And especially the behavior research, I can pop holes in it, quite quickly. Well, let me take something really kind of out there that's a little bit more general to all general horse people, which is, have you ever heard of the Ranger article by Deb Bennett, who's brilliant, by the way? I love Deb Bennett's work. But it's called the Ranger article, where she goes through and says how old horses are when all their bones develop. Have you seen that?
Yes, ma'am. It's been a while, but yeah.
It goes around, it gets put out there by people that are advocating for horses to be started when they're 6, things like that.
Has the bone maturation chart and all that stuff with it. Yes,
that's the one. Okay. I urge anyone that wants to put that out as the gospel truth to actually go and look at the references. So I sat down and I looked at the references. I went through them all. There were tiny little studies of a handful of horses that had massive variations within the tiny little population. They're all different breeds. Not one of those papers said this is a generalized fact. Not one of them. So the Ranger article, though it's put as evidence all the time for people to purport we shouldn't be starting horses till they're 6, and that's their evidence that they say because horses don't mature this until they're this old, that's actually not good science. It's a good piece by Deb Bennett to, the information she found, and that was what was found, but it gets then taken as fact. There is no fact within any of those. It was what was found within small group populations of massive variation within the small population. It's just the statistical kind of finding from a small case study research, and you've got to know how it is. Yet that's put as fact. And if you really, really, really want to get me up in arms, mention the word parasympathetic or sympathetic nervous system. That drives me nuts, that conversation of how bastardized and simplified that is within our horse world. Thinking that the parasympathetic's good, thinking the parasympathetic's good and the sympathetic's bad. I'm sorry. Stress is not a bad thing. Stress is necessary for life. Stress is life. It creates life. and a real misunderstanding about that. So you can see I can get quite ranty, Daniel. Can you see that?
No, that's fine. Yes, ma'am. That's part of the pet peeve conversation and all of it.
Yeah.
And I like the way the conversation is going. Kind of speaking of science and research, true scientists are trying to disprove their own theory, and when they can't, that's when they consider it kind of proven, right? If you're aiming at, I've got this theory and I'm trying to prove it to be true, that's kind of going at all of that stuff wrong. And one other thing I'll say is horse research is incredibly expensive and tends to be very underfunded. So a lot of the research out there is just like it's done with 5 horses or a sample size that's so small, it's pretty hard to really, generalize based off of it. So yeah, we need to be a lot more careful about some of the claims that we make. The dominance theory thing that you mentioned, I was going to ask you about that a little later, but that's a pretty big one for me. And I think I mentioned this on maybe the podcast episode that'll come out right before this one, but it seems that the big claim that I hear now is the notion of resource guarding, and that pecking order within an established herd is somewhat fluid. So this horse isn't always number 17 in this set of circumstances. He might be number 13 or whatever the deal is. And to me, I don't know whoever has argued against that. Any person that's been around horses for any number of years will have seen fluctuations occur. The very notion of the fact that I think I can walk up to this horse and take the lead rope from the owner and within minutes establish a rapport of myself being dominant to him indicates I believe in a fluidity of the dominance hierarchy. Otherwise, I couldn't affect it, right? Yeah. So I kind of wonder what these people are arguing sometimes, or who they think they're arguing against, Yeah,
I can give you my 2 cents worth on that. And being someone that's now gone out and watched horses in life, like how they're actually being in nature, how nature intended them to be, versus the horses we have in the paddock, are 2 different kettles of fish, totally different. It's like, I do it like this. If aliens came to Earth and they went to a lunatic asylum and they went back and reported, hey, I've gone to visit the humans, this is what we found, we'd know they'd be getting a screwed up view of humans, right? We'd know that because they went to a lunatic asylum. Well, domestication completely messes up the horse's natural hardwiring or how they're wired. We completely mess that up by what we do. They are not living as nature intended. So we cannot look, I think, so what happened, people look at the horses in nature, in their family groups of how they organize themselves and operate, which is complex and fluid. And of course, stallions will have dominant moment. When other stallions came in, they'll be that. And got to remember, dominance is just a theory. It's just a word we use to describe what's going on. You could call it survival of the fittest if you wanted to. Like, you can give it, it's just a name that it's a concept. Okay. It's a theoretical concept, but it's a word that people use to describe that when one will push on another one will back off. Agree? It's just a term we use to describe that. So people get up in arms about the use of a word. Okay, it's like respect. We could have a whole conversation about that word too, right? So we see it, so it exists. Does it exist all the time in nature? No, it's very complex how they organize themselves, and that's why I really enjoyed listening to Kerry's thoughts, because it's kind of really fascinating how they how they join together or pick each other or push horses in and out. It's really quite interesting, and how the family group operate with their particular, they've got more roles than level pecking things. They've got these roles that they do for them to be fluid and navigate nature. However, taking that and plonking that and looking at the domesticated horse situation, we've got a whole lot of horses that have really had that element of how they get on with each other a bit bastardized, depending on how they've been brought up. If they've been brought up on big ranches in big spaces in more natural environments, sure, they got more of a chance. But what we're seeing is horses in an unnatural kind of situation. So you get different types of influences, different types of insecurities and horseness, ability to be able to relate to another horse operating. So calling something like you saying, like, you take that horse and that using that concept of dominating and using that is not wrong, right? Someone might criticize you for saying that it's not wrong, but I might use the words, well, look, I motivated the horse to follow my feel. I motivated the horse to follow me and my thoughts and to follow me. That's what I taught him. I could say that. That's still saying the same thing, but you use the word domination. And that's a comment where you have said you have pushed your ideas on that horse. That's a difference. It's a word. It's a word. Mm-hmm. And I don't get up in arms about it because that's a perfectly good use of your word to use that. Whether horses just operate like by that, no, it's more complex than that. It's more complex. And when we see horses in our pastures in a domesticated situation, we haven't got a real situation. And you are going to get in like the bully horse, the bully horse. Everyone's got a bully horse that kind of pushes everyone around. Mm-hmm. Kerry had this really fascinating observation that he did from years of going back and looking at the same herds and stuff all the time. And he noticed one thing. One is he realizes his eyes were always drawn to the horse that moved the most, right? This is in his early days and when he started working it out. His eyes were always drawn to the horse that moved the most, that kind of created the most kind of chaos in the herd. But it was always the horse that disappeared the most from the herd, that didn't exist anymore, that was like removed or dead or whatever. So the horses that move a lot are also what predators focus on, because his interest in horses started with really being interested in predators and the predator-prey interaction. And it just kind of slipped into looking at the horses because he couldn't understand why the hell these horses were being picked off by things, but they're actually quite relaxed most of the time. Whereas he got attacked by a mountain lion once and it freaked him out and he never got over it since. Yet they'd get picked off and then within a few hours they'd be all like, meh, or chilled again. Like, how does a prey animal live like that? He was really fascinated by that. So when we're looking at our domesticated situation and we got the bully horse, right? The bully horse doesn't exist in nature. They don't exist, or they're not there for very long. They don't have that role pushing each other around. It doesn't work like that. It's more subtle. So what we're seeing there is an insecure horse, but they exist, and they exist in our domesticated state. So you can't go and look at ethology studies on herd hierarchies and think you can apply it to domesticated herds, because our domesticated herds are a bit messed up. So you're going to get push and things like that happening more, because that's what happens in smaller environment with less resources and different kind of horses choose themselves in nature. They don't choose themselves in domestication. So you're going to get a disrupted system. So whether you call it like there's dominance going on or not, we can't say that it isn't. And anyway, it's a concept used to describe push and pull, like push and move, which is what we see. And I'll say it again, I ain't going to get up in arms about that at all at you. If people want to use that word to describe it, it actually does describe it, and you can use that theory or that thought, that concept, and you can apply it and you can get outcomes by it. How did I
try
go?
to always, yes, ma'am. No, I try to always remember that, like you mentioned, operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is also a theory, but it's basically just how one person, or if we're going to attribute it just to Skinner, it's how he recognized some truths, and that's how he organized it in his mind, and then he fleshed it out a bit more and came up with this organizational structure of operant conditioning. Like you say, it's a theory. It's self-evident. It doesn't mean that it's complete, that it can't be added to or amended a little bit, or that there are other things that also work. This is just the box he theoretically created and what he decided to put into it, and it's nothing more or less than that. And sometimes you'll have some academics that'll come up with other there's kind of I'm fighting this in the positive reinforcement purist world a little bit right now, but like a new professor decides that they have the moral high ground, and then they come up with this hierarchy of things, and this is the only way that you can possibly be a decent moral human being. And if you're outside of the box they decided to create, then you have left, any reasonable territory or any claims of ethics or morality. And all it is that particular person's way of seeing it, their organizational structure, the words they decided to use. That was part of, you had referenced the abuse article that I wrote. And I feel like I probably come off to some people as defending abuse when I write those articles. And that's not my intention at all. What I feel like I'm defending is the magnitude of the word abuse. If everything's abuse, then nothing is abuse. And so when you're going to throw out a big, important word like that, it had better actually fit the situation that's in front of you. When trivial or more trivial things become labeled with those types of words, I think that's very, very dangerous, and it can lead to a complete misunderstanding by people that Dunning-Kruger deal, right? They don't know enough to know what they don't know yet, or you lose all validity of the word. Now, if everything is abuse, then nothing is abuse.
Yeah.
And
it's actually got a term. It's called concept creep. Concept creep is where, like trauma. Let's just take the word trauma. That's got concept creeped massively. So, years ago, trauma is what people experienced after war or after they had a terrible car accident or something like that. Now people can get traumatized by hearing a passage out of a book. That's called concept creep. Okay, and that's the whole thing of what is abuse. Although I got a lot to say about the opposite condition, the positive reinforcement crowd, because they think I am the devil. But it's kind of like I get it and I kind of understand how they got there. I remember, and first of all, I want to say, I consider myself, I'm the middle, right? When it comes to, and I'm an advocate for the middle of horse training. I have a full toolbox of influence. So you know what? Those skills of those rope skills I've got and those whip skills and things like that I've got, that would be labeled as like, oh, that's really, I can really force a horse to do something. That's what helps me put a horse on a trailer when there's a fire coming and I have to, or I've got to save someone's life, or I've got a horse that's very dangerous. Those skills come out, and I do that for the ethical argument is strong for that. But then I've got positive reinforcement skills as well. Hey, I'm putting that in my toolbox as well, because that comes in handy every now and then. And I encourage my clients and stuff to learn both, because they're going to feed their horse some treat. They're going to do something positive. They got to understand the devil they're creating. They got to understand what they're doing. That's powerful stuff. So I'm the middle, and I respect the people that have stretched me. And I remember once having this moment where I finally got it. I finally worked out what I think has happened to a lot of the positive reinforcement people, because I read their stories and I read what they say and stuff like that. And I'll never forget this moment. I taught a lady that was having trouble with a horse how to lead her horse, right? Because the horse was super pushy and super dangerous. And I had just done the old, getting the horse to walk behind by stopping and swinging the lead rope. That old simple one, right? Walk forward, stop, swing the lead rope. It might touch the horse on the chest a couple of times, but then they learn just to walk. They start off getting a little bit worried because whatever, and then they work out that if they stop when you're stopped, it's sweet and they relax, right? They get it. They've worked it out. And anyway, it was all beaut. Gave her the session. It was wonderful. Taught her a few things. It was all good, right? Then I went out the next week because she told me she'd been having some problem. It was being really difficult to lead. Right? Anyway, I went and watched her, and the horse was dead terrified on the end of that lead rope. And I saw what she did. Okay. It was the most simple bit of poor timing. So simple. So what I taught her to do was walk, stop, then swing. Now, what she was doing is swinging before she stopped by like just the tiniest amount, like seconds, a second, not even a second. But what was happening is that poor horse went from when I stopped, of course, the horse go up, stop. There was a clear signal for them. They could navigate. But just that moment with the minorest poor timing, the horse was only being able to detect random abuse, right? Random swinging ropes that they couldn't avoid, right? So, of course, it freaked out. Now, to anyone watching that, they probably wouldn't have seen it. They'd probably think they was doing exactly the same as what I was doing. And in that moment, I realized, wow, this is the thing about the pressure, I'm primarily a pressure trainer, but I do have a full toolbox. That's what I like to say. But I then realized what it was, okay, is like when it goes wrong, when you don't apply pressure training well, it can go pear-shaped massively, right? Especially when you combine a nervous person without self-awareness of what they're bringing to the horse, 2, poor timing, and 3, something that hits the horse, right, that can hit the horse. You have a recipe for disaster. So what these positive, I always think that's where these positive reinforcement people are coming from. You know, they're coming from a bad experience of actually not applying pressure well, because when it's done wrong, it can be done wrong by the tiniest thing. It can create a disaster. So, but that's what they're judging. They're judging their poor exposure or their poor practice of applying it well. So that's why I've got to teach people, you know, like I use my pressure tools, my whips or spurs or whatever, flag, whatever. I use them so I don't have to use them. They don't understand that if I'm still using a whip by session 1, by session 2, I've done something wrong or the horse is struggling to do something. Your aim of using those tools is to create meaning. Once the meaning's established, you just have to maintain it, which means you shouldn't be using it all the time. If you are using your tool all the time and escalating that pressure, you are doing it wrong. But people don't see that because they're doing it wrong or not being effective in its use and using poor timing. Pressure training gets a poor rap because of its poor application. And that, of course, then, because I see all the upset horses, and then, you know, then that's what they're judging it on. So I can have a good guess where it comes from.
That brings up a couple of things for me. One is that the purists in the positive reinforcement, they always seem to take the best case scenario of their world and the worst case scenario of ours and then combine the two. I'm completely with you on I do believe the horse world to be mostly a skill building world. You have aptitudes and abilities and skills that you develop, and it is like putting tools in a toolbox. And I want a full toolbox. I want all the tools in there. I don't see where it's good for me or good for the horse if I decide to take 80% of my tools and throw them out and isolate.
Exactly.
I'm only going to use a screwdriver and a hammer no matter what I come across. I'm going to isolate myself to these two or limit myself to these two tools. And in that, just I don't mean to be just picking on that world, but this is kind of where I see it the most. If you don't already have the skills of being able to read the horse correctly in real time and good timing, you can flat out turn a horse dangerous with positive reinforcement. It is not a bypass of the development of these skills. So can you be successful with positive reinforcement? You absolutely can. Can you be successful with positive reinforcement lacking the skills that you would also need to be successful using pressure and release? You cannot. You still have to be able to read the horse correctly. You still have to have timing working for you. If you don't have those things, you're going to make a mess of it no matter which way you go. So you can't bypass the building of the skills there. There's no road that omits you from that.
Yeah, and I also say this, which doesn't go down well, which gets me seen as the devil. Okay, so I say, right, you're always going to be using pressure. You got a halter on that horse's head, you're always going to use pressure. And as I say, so you're going to completely block out and not learn how to do that well, which is the reality of the horse's life, because it's evil, because you think it's evil. So you're not going to educate yourself on how to do that well. You know, I said that's letting the horse down. That is narrowing down your ability to help a horse into a very narrow spectrum. And it's like, for instance, I had a lovely client that's in the US that does volunteer work with a rescue organization. And the rescue organization, their trainer was that they had at one time was just positive reinforcement. 5 months down the track, she had this horse that she couldn't halter. Still hadn't got there yet. Wasn't ready, right? Wasn't ready. Couldn't be caught. Couldn't be led, couldn't have its feet done, couldn't see a vet, couldn't have anything because, it's a slow road or whatever. My client got in there and was able to get the horse in one session, One session, she got the horse good with the holder, got it leading, got whatever, got its feet done, got everything, bang, in and out. Now you're going to give me an argument you're holier than now? That's, like, you've got to be skilled. You've got it, the spectrum of your ability to be able to influence that horse through all your tools and do them well that's an advocate for the horse. That's reality. That's not being morally superior. And this whole thing is that we can't stress a horse, like the stress that that when I go in there and when I go in there and I'm working with a horse, especially if the horse doesn't know and it might have learnt some negative thoughts or it's given up and it's been a bit pushy or reluctant or whatever, and I have to give them an oi, pay me attention and follow this, learn. And they might go, oh my God, the human bites. They think that for 5 minutes, not even that. And then they go, oh, is that all you want? They get oh, is that it? And you go, yeah, that's it. And they go, okay, I can do that. I can navigate you. And then the owner always gets like really confused because I've given the horse a bit of a tap or something like that, or a bit of a bump that they've been too scared to, mainly because they're scared of the emotional response from the horse and if they can handle it or not, right? Or if the horse won't love them by the end of it. And then they get really bizarre that the horse then actually really likes me. It's calm around me. It comes to me. It's not worried about me. Why? Because that horse knows I'm reliable. It knows how to navigate me. And in fact, if I do a good job, that horse is going back to the paddock and they're going, man, that Shelley, she's so easy. When she does this, you just do this. Sweet. She's so easy. You just got to do this. She does this, keeps it quiet in the box, doesn't give me any pressure. It's all good. Like I'm getting the horse to think that they're influencing me, if I'm doing my job well. I will say that I did decide to go down the rabbit hole. I did go, okay, I'm going to train a horse with positive reinforcement. I'm going to give it a crack, right? I'm going to learn it. I'm going to practice it. If I say I'm really good at pressure, I'm going to do this as a really good thing as well. And I went down the track and I did that and that kind of thing. But I have to say that my final assessment was I don't like the type of motivation and learning that implants in that horse's head. I don't like it. It's so external. It's not, you're not tapping into what I consider is more intrinsic motivation to be able to follow and navigate, which I'm able to do in pressure. It's always a bit of like, pay me, pay me, pay me. There's a bit of that. And even though you can get them a lot, their thought is always pay me. And the end of it, there was just something about that I don't like, the type of motivation. The other thing I don't like is when I use pressure, I have control over that amount of pressure. When you use food, you're dealing with baggage from that horse's past. You got to pick the food that's going to give you the right level of motivation, and then it changes during the session, and you got these short little windows. It's tricky. And if you think you don't stress a horse out with positive reinforcement, I call bullshit. Okay, it can be very stressful, and always reminds me of Oliver. More food. Like that whole thing of being the master and the slave handing out the food. Like if you think that doesn't cause a horse stress, you're really, really wrong. It absolutely does. And I believe that I can cause less stress overall and less frustration for a horse using my pressure in a more effective way than that. And that's why I'm primarily a pressure trainer, but I do love teaching positive reinforcement. I can do some fun things with at least with horses. I can teach them things at the same time as giving them a treat, and I can tick that box for a lot of people. And, there's some things that, I can do with that. I might have to pull out my positive reinforcement if someone has really poisoned a horse to a pressure type thing that I normally would, like saddling or mounting blocks, or even sometimes with trailering. If horses have had a bad experience, I use it to create a positive association. So it is an important tool in my toolbox. Yeah, but it's not my go-to.
No, I agree with all of that. Once you understand feel and you can control that, you can ask for a little more, a little less or whatever, and you have that dynamic, that's really where that sort of intimate conversation begins with the horse. And to me, if you've experienced that, you're not putting that down. Like that's where that's the good stuff. So once you get to that spot, I don't I don't see what you get out of putting it down. One of the other things I'll say is that this never gets talked about, or I don't ever see it talked about in the positive reinforcement world, but there is such a thing as satiation. So if we have kind of a pay to play with this horse, at some point, the horse is no longer motivated enough by the food. Maybe 30 minutes in, it may be on this Tuesday or whatever, but it's not with horses, it's not as reliable. If we go with something like a more domesticated high drive dog like a Malinois, then that's not the same thing. But even if we want to talk about it in dogs, you take the same method and you apply it to a Basset hound that has no motivation, and you're not going to get the same results that you're going to get with the Malinois. So and again, I guess we got a little bit into the resource guarding and all of that stuff. I have always found what I don't see talked about there is that is very much an idealized, naive world that does not exist. Maybe it exists for 5 minutes at a time, but because everything is so dynamic, there's no way we can provide that indefinitely. It just doesn't fit in with the real world approach. So I'm fine with it being a tool in the toolbox, and it definitely does have its advantages at certain times. I have definitely found, kind of like you said, with some horses that are really, really soured, or they are really fearful and very much withdrawn. But I honestly find with those type of horses, the biggest change I get in them is when I can initially get them to take food from my hand, because most of them won't for a good long while. And when that wall comes down, that's usually the biggest part of the change that I see. So I don't necessarily have to go super far down that road.
No, to get that. Can I say something else that's going to get hate mail?
Sure.
So the other thing about the holier than now positive reinforcement crew, and I don't mean that, the pure positive, the people that send at the end of the spectrum, very hardcore positive reinforcement people, they're always putting videos up, of how, the horses are coming to them and they're doing these things. When you've delved into soundness like how I have, right, it's just like I cringe when I see those videos. They're going, look at me in my force-free training and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, your horse is grossly overweight. It's unsound as hell because it's not hardly moving. Look at the gut issues in that horse. It's like soundness. The horse is not fit. It's not doing enough. And there you are holding the flag of moral superiority about how you're force-free and you're super ethical. But I'm sorry, you can't even see your horses are physically struggling and are actually not well. But yeah, good on you. Didn't use a whip. Well done. There you go.
Yes,
get your hate mail ready, Daniel.
Well, no, like that was, I don't know if I've effectively made the point, but the article I wrote on abuse, like that was, what are we going to call abuse? Because it's the people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones thing, right? Like you are usually the people that are arguing on the internet. Now they have that moral superiority. They're putting themselves on a pedestal, but they're completely unaware that they have their own facets within what they're doing that you could also call abusive, especially if we're going to bring the level of what that word means down to a more trivial. I think abuse is a word that is descriptive of an extreme. I don't think you question when you if we're watching the same video and we have people coming away with differing opinions whether it was or wasn't abuse, it wasn't abuse. If it's abuse, everybody's going to agree that it was abuse, right? Because that word denotes an extreme. I'm fine with if we come up with a word that means half of what abuse means, right? Like it's a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10, but I don't know that word. But it's not abuse. Abuse is a 10, right? It's the extreme. So
the word that should be used is ethical, but ethical gets messed up, right? We do ethical training. It's like you can't do ethical training. Ethics is an argument. And my previous job as a university academic, I was the person that gave ethics lectures, right? The concept of ethics. It's a concept. It's not a thing. Just because you don't use a whip or hit a horse or tap a horse up or use a spur on a horse or whatever, doesn't mean you're ethical or not. Pain and causing a moment of pain or temporary stress or whatever like that does not mean you're not ethical, because ethical is an argument and it's context related. And it's an argument, and there's lots of different frameworks I use. The common one used in medicine, because that was in your essay, you'd actually written about abuse. It's like, okay, we can't cause any pain, but you're going to rock up and let the vet give your horse injections, right? That's going to hurt. Or your horse has got an abscess and you're going to, make your horse stand there while the farrier digs it out, right? So they're both kind of health-related things. So the health ethics argument's really interesting because, we give people chemotherapy. It makes them really, really sick. It makes their hair fall out. We cut into them and give them surgery. We give them drugs that make them sick, we, can put people in psychiatric hospitals. We can, we do a whole lot of things. We deny people in some states, in some countries, the right for euthanasia and things like that. That can all be, health's a realm of pain, like of considering pain and actions and stuff like that. And for any argument in any situation to say whether something's ethical or not, like take the scenario of the trainer that's still 5 months down the track hasn't clicker trained the full acceptance of the halter on a horse versus my client that was able to do it in one session, and you have to get that horse on a horse trailer because there's a fire coming or it's unwell or with its feet. You got to look at that. It's like, there's not just an ethical argument is just like there can't be any stress or pain. It's like whatever you do has to have a beneficial outcome, and it's minimized as much as possible, but it doesn't mean that there's none. It doesn't work like that.
You had mentioned kind of the levels of maturity of people, and the second one that they tend to get stuck on is being moved by their feelings about something. That's what I tend to see in those situations is that horse is still in that same spot 5 months later because of the person's feelings. It has nothing to do with the horse. Just like another person could come in here that wasn't bothered by this, and they could take the horse and advance it very quickly. The horse is no worse for that. Like you said, you could be rough with this bulled horse, and 5 minutes later, that horse would pick you over the person that's been feeding it treats for the last 6 months and got it spoiled because now you've set boundaries. They appreciate you. They know what's going on. You're predictable. I'm going to pick that person.
You're predictable.
Right? And you could correct me here. I probably should look this word up before I use it like this. But to me, if something really passes muster as kind of an ethical law, that's something that should be beyond the ability to evolve. So if we're going to look at something we did 200 years ago and it was considered ethical then but not considered now ethical, then that's sort of proof that some of these ethical arguments, we haven't found the core principle in that argument yet. We haven't articulated it properly because it is evolving. If it was correct, it couldn't evolve. It's like gravity. Gravity exists. It doesn't stop existing because you feel like it shouldn't or whatever. You don't look at it from a different context. Yeah. And I think that if we actually come to the core of what that principle is, then it should universally be applied and always be true in all cases. And if we're not meeting that standard, then we haven't actually found what the principle is. And that's kind of how I feel that word abuse is right now. We have not managed, at least as far as I'm aware, to really pin down where the boundaries of what abuse is and isn't are. Because there's too many situations where if this is your principle, well, it doesn't apply here anymore. And so that principle is not a valid principle. At least that's how I oversimplify.
No, and I think
look at it absolutely in an overly simple way.
Yeah, and it's that idea of concept creep. Abuse, trauma, they're both words and concepts that have been crept into it, diluting its meaning, which I don't think is, and the argument against concept creep, just say with trauma and with abuse, is that it's almost downplaying true, like what is real abuse, abuse level 5 out of 5, if we're going to see everything. And that's, I think with horses, what is very poorly understood when we try to apply human stuff over a horse, which is really unfair, is that a horse's reality is created from a physical experience. We create our reality from two realms. One is from physical experiences. Absolutely, we do. But we're able to talk to each other in words, and we can form realities or tell people, ideas about what they're going to experience and why they should understand this. And we got the ability of language that we can convey very complex meanings and realities to each other without having to physically experience it. A horse has to have a physical experience, right, to actually to learn something. It has to, right, through its senses in some way. We can't do it with words. And therefore, how a horse responds to something is also going to be how that's been initially interpreted. But how horses also respond to things is what they learn about it. And another bit of a hit out at another myth by the positive reinforcement gang is that they say, once you've used fear to train a horse to do something, just say horse wouldn't go in the round yard, so I pointed, clicked, and tapped it with a whip. That from then on, even though it learns my point means go off, it's always going to be doing it with fear because of the classical conditioning the horse had at that moment. That is the biggest myth ever, right? Now, it goes back to actually Pavlov's dog. Remember Pavlov's dog? How Pavlov got the dogs and they rang the bell and things like that. There's something about that experiment that's left off that no one talks about, is that Pavlov couldn't actually show anyone outside his lab his experiments because as soon as the environment changed with different people, the dogs didn't respond because it was different. As soon as he changed one little thing, it didn't respond. And what it showed is that associations can change. So all of us that work with pressure, we'll know the horse might initially go, holy crap, they might get a little bit worried about that. But when they learn it and they learn that you're reliable, safe, that makes sense, the association changes. They're no longer fearful of that. And we have that same experience with ourselves, but we try to, put that out of our mind. I suppose, not many people had a great first day of school. A lot of people might have cried and been worried about school. Then if you go for the positive reinforcement crowd that the first experience nails you for the rest of your life, then how come you ended up loving school or enjoying it or enjoying something that you initially thought, or swimming, people might be scared of learning to swim the first time, but then they learn to love swimming. Your associations are fluid. As you learn more about them, they change. And that's not, they like thinking the horses will remain traumatized by that for the rest of its life. Doesn't happen. And even in the experiments they've done with that actually show, even when they put rats in boxes and electrocute them and get them to turn on levers and associate lights and stuff with pushing levers and teaching them in the Skinner boxes, they actually put little electrodes in the heads of rats and actually found out that the parts of the brain, initially it was fear, and then it actually changed to a sense of safety and more of the same realm that a positive reinforcement thing would light up in their head. So it changes. Mm-hmm. Yes, but there's a lot of myths.
I would also say I get a lot into classical conditioning and operant conditioning and those kind of different realms of associative conditioning. The Pavlovian stuff, the classical conditioning, is very much in the realm of the subconscious, not the conscious mind. So it's not about choice. It's about, and when you get into the realm of the subconscious, your ability as the influencer to be specific about how they're influenced gets very clouded. and so, like, for instance, there was a Russian experiment with I think the boy's name was Peter, where they shocked him with the white rabbit and all of that stuff. And they made him utterly terrified. But then when he grows up to be a man and he goes outside and he sees a cloud that's a white fluffy cloud, and it takes him back to the rabbit thing. And again, he loses bowel control and all that. Like, that wasn't something that they intended or foresaw or anything like that. When you mess around in that realm, you're taking some risk that I don't think a lot of people understand, because those associations can take directions you didn't expect or intend. And once that's happened, you can be hard to get everything back in the box again, so to speak. Right. So
the thing is, though, what should have happened there is what happened with Peter. That association was left. So what we do when we come with horses, because we train them, that we're representing the association, so the direct association is able to change. The thing with Peter is that he was involved in that experiment, and then it was never revisited to, for his association not to change with that. So he's never able to learn it, and that's why it had such an effect later on. But yeah, it's a realm that you got to, you got to appreciate. And the horse is all the time. Horse's mind is associative. So it works on that level. Ours is more complex. Ours is a little bit more complex, well, a lot more complicated than that. We form a lot more kind of connections and things like that, and make a whole lot more shit up in our mind than they do.
I think that's an incredibly important point, and this was something I was going to bring up with you since you're a human education specialist. I think that anthropomorphism is one of the biggest battles that we fight, and I don't know if it sounds derogatory or condescending the way that I keep saying it, but I don't know of a better way to say it. Maybe I'll find better words one day, but I am constantly slapped in the face dealing with some people that they don't really have a concept of what a horse is.
Right.
The reality of this, just like that I saw on my Google pops up today, the BBC has just released an article that horses, we've now discovered, some research paper has discovered, so all of the science has changed. All of a sudden, everything we knew before is wrong, and now we've discovered that horses have an ability to plan and even be strategic. And I just can't, I know the next month and a half is fixing to be, this shit's going to be thrown into my face 10 times. And horses have emotions, that this whole sentience word that gets thrown around. I'm not denying that horses have emotions, but I'm denying that horses have emotions as deep and complex as humans do. When we tell a person that horses have emotions, it doesn't mean they have the same emotions you have. If we say that a horse has a part of the brain which is about the size of a sheet of paper on the outside that we could call a neocortex, which is where the strategic planning and all, he does have that part of the brain. But it is like 0.1% as developed as yours is. The notion of strategic planning in the brain of a horse is absurd. And whoever wrote that article needs to go swim around your great white sharks over there until they get a concept of the reality of what animals are like. And we keep having this crap foisted upon us. And I don't know, maybe it's job security. Maybe I should look at it in a little better way, but it is damn tiring. I will say that. I wish.
Yeah. I read an article on that. I've got to actually pull the paper out, right? And just reading the article was like, oh God. Okay, so let me just give you a run through about what I wrote. Now, I haven't read the full article, so the hate mail can, I'm acknowledging that I haven't read it. I'll sit down and read it. But it was just like, you got to understand when you do research like this is that it is making shit up. You are winding a tail around your findings of how you've boxed it up. So what they did, they got 20 horses, right? And they got them in and they got them to target something they had to touch to get a treat, right? And then they taught them that. So the horses were good at touching, getting their treat, touching, getting their treat. And then they got really good at that. And then they changed the scenario slightly. So there was a light that come on. If the light was on, they weren't allowed to. So the new rules of the game, right, that if the light was on and there was stop, is that they weren't allowed to ask, right? And so if they did ask during that time, they were put in time out and not given any treat, right? And then lo and behold, the horses came back and started only touching when the stoplight was off or whatever. And it's just like, right. So you're going to see that strategic thinking when you can say that's just a reshuffling of your operant conditioning. Seriously, you just discouraged a behavior by doing negative punishment, and you're going to say this is thought. You can I haven't read the full paper, I'll have to, but it's just are you seriously saying that you have also manipulated the consequences is a horse doing high-level strategic planning? You just did operant conditioning. Like, it was just like, I have to read the whole paper, but it's coming to those things is like, oh, here we go. No, and again, it's a case study of 20 horses, which I already, not even reading the paper, have 16 debatable arguments against their actual findings that can be looked at in multiple ways. So yes, but we most likely are going to be inundated with that. It's like the word, I don't know, Daniel, what do you think of the use of the word consent with a horse, getting the horse?
Oh, God. Yeah, I have this little bit of burning throw up coming right up in the back of my throat right here. That word drives me up the wall. Yeah, it really does.
It makes me wild. Wild. I wrote but we see being in health as well, consent's like a bit of a holy grail, right? It's consent's a big thing. And in fact, to get true consent from people is actually hard, let alone from a horse. And how dare you think that it's fair to say that an animal can consent to what's happening to it when you've manipulated it, right? This is the whole thing. Consent has to be done with free will, autonomous decision. If you have been given treats to do a behavior or whatever, or manipulated to do something in any way, it cannot be consent in any way, shape, or form. It is not consent. Consent is a very important concept that is about free will and autonomy. A horse in domestication on the end of a lead rope, for God's sake, with its head captured or whatever, with you about to sit on it, is absolutely impossible to ever consider that animal would even have a concept of what consent is, because they don't understand concepts. And to say that is it, I find that a disgrace to the horse, and it makes me wild. I'm a guardian and advocate for the horse. It really makes my blood boil when people are saying, well, it consented to it. I'm holier than thou. Look at me, my horse giving me consent. And it's like, you manipulated that, you human piece of work. Stop it. It's not fair. It's not fair to do that to that animal, to do that. Then my rant can go on, Daniel. The whole choice of the horse. We've got to give the horse choice. Yeah, we give the horse choice. And so 1 minute it can choose to eat grass, but the next minute it's inconvenient for you. It can't eat grass. And you wonder why that horse gets frustrated or difficult, because 1 minute it can and next minute it can't. I have a simple rule with a horse. It's just like, while they're with me, I'm going to be making the decisions for them. And trust me, horse, I'm going to be, my number one concern in anything I ask you to do is going to be how you feel like it, how you feel about it. And I'm going to be making decisions for that horse's best outcome. But I'm not going to be giving them the choice, because it's my world, and their choice might be to run across that freeway or to do something dangerous, or to maybe kick a vet or something like that, which is not going to be good for it. So that just makes me wild. And it's wild because I see it as completely unfair to that beautiful animal. Amen.
I completely. Yeah, it's like having if I gave my 12-year-old son a choice of whether he's going to go to school today or not, and I respected his choice, he would never go to school, and that makes me a bad parent, not a good one. Like, it's my job. I have an actual responsibility to do what's best for him, even if he doesn't want to do what's best for him. You go back to there's a fire coming and I have to get this horse on the trailer. I don't give a shit if he consents. I don't give a shit if he agrees. If we have to tie one leg to a winch and drag him in the damn trailer, we'll deal with the ramifications of that later, but let's get him out of the way of the fire right now. The consent is I kind of get what, like, yes, I want my horse to want to be with me. I want my horse to meet me at the gate. I want him to enjoy the rides with me. I have also, I think, to my credit, that's how I look at it anyway, I have also trained a lot of horses I didn't like. I kind of describe them as the sort of horse that we could work together, but I didn't want to have a beer with them after work. And we still got done what we needed to get done. And I don't think that was abusive at all. I didn't have to like them. They didn't have to like me in order for us to work together, still accomplish something good, and for it to be good on the whole for the animal too. It like and want are rated, I think, especially when you're in a position of authority and responsibility where you have a duty to something else's best interest. You should not be swayed and influenced by things as trivial as want and like or consent.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah. Yeah. The other thing is I kind of work on a level of like, is the level of coolness. Is the horse cool with that? How do they feel about that? What's their confidence? Do they feel alarmed by this? What's their level of alarmed? Or do they feel like secure in this? You know, are they showing me they're cool or they're not cool? If they're not cool, I'm going to take notice of that and do something to get them to be cool, unless it's like an emergency or a situation that means ethically I'm going to push through that. I'm going to play a card. I'm going to push through that, but I got a damn good argument about why I've made that choice with that horse's level of coolness. Or I thought there's another great, I'm terrible, I can't remember her name, is a brilliant trainer in the US, and I'm terribly sorry I can't remember her name. She has levels of okayness. She uses the concept of levels of okayness. I can't remember who that is, and I'm sorry because she wrote a brilliant essay on it that I read. But I used the word, are they cool or are they not cool? Get them cool. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean they've consented this. Trust me, if you sat down and interviewed a horse and go, here, horse, what would you like? Would you like to live in domestication, or would you like to be a wild animal that you were born to nature to do? I'm sure none of them are going to be like, hey, put my hand up, I want to haul around humans. Like, if they read the fine print, they won't be signing up for that, my friends. They won't.
And I know we've gone almost 3 hours here, so I want to try not to take too much up more of your time.
No worries.
But I've got a couple of points that we might have to do a part 2 of this, because I could talk to you for a long time, I think. So I hope you're getting something out of this and enjoying yourself.
It's fun. No, I don't mind. I stick to, see, this is how you do it, right? Being controversial, you don't pick on people. Focus on the idea, the ideology. And then what you do is, this is the way I look at it. I work out the particular argument for it, and I work it out as if it's my argument, right? And I investigate it fully, and I go, right, I just don't go this person saying this is a crap idea or it doesn't work. I'll go, right, okay, I'm going to research as if I agree with this. So with these people, I learn it better than they do. It's like, right, what is the soundest argument? Then I look into it, and then I'll examine my own. And I got to make sure I can take my own idea out on the veranda and hit it with a baseball bat to make sure that it's pretty solid. And then I'll always know it depends. So I'm open to that. So I don't get personal. I stick to the particular ideology, and I know, the opposite point of view better than than they actually know it. And I try to know it as good as that. But also I let people have their ideas as well. I don't care if, but if you want to debate with me, I'll properly debate. I will debate you on the idea. I won't get personal, but I'll debate it. And then I'll let you have that idea if you want to keep it. But I tell you what, something I've done by doing that, I've learned good shit from people that have gone against me. I've actually, by doing that process, I have learned some good stuff. I have changed some of my ideas. I've worked out I was wrong.
There's no way to back this up, but I know how hard it is to read research, to actually read research. I don't think 3% of the people claiming to have learned this from research read the damn research.
No,
they might have read the abstract, or they read the BBC article about the research.
That's correct.
And an awful lot of times, if you read some article about it and then you go read the research, you then wonder, did the person who wrote the article actually read the research? Because these two things don't say the same thing, or was there an agenda? Or yeah, it's way more of a pain than people realize. It really, really is.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, let me get to our episode's sponsor for today. Our sponsor for this episode is TT's Calm in a Bottle. When we think of horses, we often think of wild horses like Mustangs in the Americas and Brumbies in Australia. We think of rodeos with bucking broncos and the Wild West. It's cool to romanticize about those things, but it's better to ride a nice, calm horse that won't hurt you. TT's Calm in a Bottle has you covered. We all know you could spend lots of money on a horse with tons of professional training, or you could go to clinics and seminars and spend years learning the ins and outs of horsemanship. Or stay with me here. For $29.95, you could add 10 milliliters of TT's Calm in a bottle to his feed that morning, and he'll be halfway back home before he knows any better. Years of hard work and learning the hard way and thousands of dollars, or $29.95 and inner peace. It's up to you. We have 3 in the series, depending on how far your steed needs to go to get from rank to trank. Our level 1 tranquil potion is called Mellow Marsh, and it will have your horse chill as can be and without a care in the world. Dragons and elephants won't faze him at all because he's probably already seeing them. Our level 2 tranquil potion is called Meta and Keta. It doesn't matter if your horse wants to trot all day. Usually Meta and Keta will bring the RPMs right down to idle. If you really have a hot mess on your hands, Tranquil Potion number 3 will have them calm as can be. We can't tell you what's in it, but let's just say poppies might be involved. And if you give this stuff to the normal horse, you're going to need an Uber to get back to the barn. It's like having learned helplessness made useful. Is he tranquil or is he tranquilized? Only you need to know the answer. Tonic Trance's Calm in a Bottle has all the calm with none of the work or knowledge. All right. Very proud of that sponsor for this episode.
You just said from rank to trank. I've written that down. I'm losing that. I'm using that rank to trank. Oh my God. Man, millionaires. Absolute billionaires, you beef. That was true.
I've had a few of these sponsors that I think might need to come to fruition. Some of them are actually pretty good business ideas. Not that one necessarily, but some of the others.
Tell you what.
So in this space that you occupy, sort of the straddling 2 worlds. So you have the horse training chops and the understanding of how to do that, and then you have the human learning chops and the understanding of how that goes. Do you consider yourself to be in more one world than the other? Like you use the word confidence a lot in your descriptions of courses and things. Are you teaching riders to be more confident and kind of trying to fill their cup more? Or are you teaching horses to be more confident to compensate for the riders more? Or is it a 50-50?
That is a really cool question because it happens all at the one time. So like the whole talk on confidence and nervous riders out there makes me a bit wild. You know, it's like, let's go and just imagine we're all safe and set some SMART goals and stuff like that. It's like, it works like this. And I worked out that it's an equation, right? How confident you feel is a factor of how competent you feel with your horse, right? And how much trust you have for that horse, which means how reliable you feel that horse is to be able to do what you're asking it to do, right? And then a factor of time that you need to put marbles in the trust marble jar. You know, people can have, you know, like they might have a horse that, you know, it does one little jump at a bird flying out of the bush and they're like, yeah, whatever, keep on going. If they've known the horse a lot and they've got a lot of marbles in their marble jar. But if they don't know the horse really well and the bird flies out of the bush and they don't really know it, that'll rattle them. So it's at any one moment, a person's level of confidence with that horse is a combination of their sense of competence, which is skills, their skills to influence the horse, multiplied by their sense of reliability of the horse. And of course, the horse is reliable when it's changed, when it actually feels confident and trusting of you, okay, of how reliable you can influence that horse. And then you got to clock up time. You got to clock up time with that horse. I worked out with trust with horses. It was really interesting. Some people are trust builders and some people will trust up front and then they lose their trust with the horse. People are different. So some people need time with a horse to get to know it. You know, even though the horse does nothing wrong, they feel they got skills. They still need that little bit of time to build up to, you know, to make sure that they can competently handle that horse and that horse is reliable and stuff like that. Whereas other people just trust the horse up front. And then if the horse does anything, they completely lose trust for that horse. So people are either trust builders or trust up front. It's really quite interesting, but it's not about doing smart list or thinking clear thoughts or envisaging calmness and all these types of things, because that subconscious that you talked about before, you have to prove to that subconscious that you are competent and that this horse is reliable. You can't pretend, and the horse knows whether you're pretending, because it's like it can see whether you're congruent inside or out. It can pick whether you're faking it till you're making it. You got to be that. And that's why I rip people off horses. I put them on the ground. I get them handling skills to begin with, so they can feel very competent handling that horse on the ground. Then I take them up into the saddle. But the whole process of rebooting their horse and gets the horse in a good place, because the two have to work together. So I basically, your answer to that question is I kill two birds with one stone.
And you consider this bird killing to be ethical, right?
Absolutely.
I didn't mean to make you snort your coffee out of your nose. I'm sorry. I
was just thinking it's a bit of an abusive kind of analogy or metaphor that I'm using there. But it just that's how it has to happen. You can't just hope it and wing it and listen to some relaxation music or whatever. You can't. It's multifaceted. And another thing it comes down to is your own body, and how fit and balanced your body feels, because if your body feels vulnerable, balance-wise, or perched on something, good luck feeling competent and good luck feeling the situation's reliable. It's a holistic approach that you got to take. And it's interesting. I thought when I started out helping people that I was massively helped by learning how to influence the horse. That's kind of was my ticket to feeling to my own confidence. But I discovered that other people were different, and I just keep delving and delving and delving to try to find all the layers of what it was. It wasn't just my experience. And of course, I got this fascination with how humans learn to be, develop their expertise. And, people think there's natural talent. You can have natural predispositions to picking up things quickly, but most talented people have worked incredibly hard at it. And anyone has that ability to be talented in anything they dream to be, if they just learn how to practice right and get the right kind of path up the mountain. You develop your own talent. It's totally learned. Like if you looked at me 20 years ago, you'd be I was your quintessential, typical, painful woman rider pulling a horse's head off. So I've been there. I've been that person. That's why I'm kind to them. And I understand them, because I was that once. I ain't going to judge them. I was that. I was saved.
It's kind of, and I guess this ties into my next question, but the spark escaped the campfire. I didn't catch it soon enough there. What was I going to say? It's gone. Okay. Well, my next question then would be, so one thing I definitely did have in my career, you kind of asked about that moment where the horse thing changed for me. I didn't really have a moment. I had a specific moment where the people side of it changed for me. And I realized 10 or 12 years ago that I had gotten into a business to get away from people, and I had stupidly chosen a people business to go hide in. And now I'd learned all this stuff about horses, but the whole job was explaining it to people, and I didn't know nearly as much about the people. And so really for the last 12 or 15 years, I have done way more studying in human psychology than I have about horses.
Yep.
And also learn, just as you've said, that's what you might call a soft science. It's not a hard science with clear objective data, and it's a much more cloudy, murky, theoretical land than some other things. I love these 2-part questions. It's an either or. Are you decisive or indecisive? And all. One of my favorite little sayings is that there's only 2 kinds of people in this world: people simple enough to believe that there's only 2 kinds of people in this world, and everybody else. Right.
Very true.
Has those layers, that little complexity to it.
Yep.
So do you find your understanding of how humans learn to be your biggest asset in here, or are there more tools to the game? I didn't ask that very well, but I think you understand what I'm getting at there.
No, I think a combination of, I understand people really well, and I actually like people, okay, because really anyone that's like if you've ever come across a painful person or a rude person or a horrible person, they normally got something going on. And if you knew their story or get to know them a little bit better, you'll actually find there's a reason for that. So I got great patience for people. That's what they always say, oh my God, Shelley, you got so much patience. And it's just like, yeah, well, I was that person once, you'd be surprised. People are essentially good. Humans are essentially good. There is goodness to them. It is just normally, if they are difficult to deal with, it's normally because of something that's probably pretty sad. Okay. And so I always remember that. I let people have their own free will. I totally believe in people choosing for themselves what to believe. I don't get upset if they don't want to believe me or they don't even like me. It's like I play the fair's fair rule. Normally if someone doesn't like me, I don't like them very much. So what kind of dickhead am I to think that I can dislike them, but they have to like me? Like what kind of entitlement realm does that come from? So I play the fair's fair rule all the time. But I just really understand people. And once you understand how people learn things, see, people think if someone's just standing there and you tell them what to do and why, and they don't get it, if you think that they should even get that, you don't know what you're doing. That's not how humans learn. And the other thing is people go, they always say this, to me all the time. It's like, I can't stand people. I can't be bothered with them. And it's like, hang on. And another trainer or horse professional might say that to me. And it's like, hang on, you care about the horse, yet you're going to tell me you're going to write off the people. I'm sorry. The only way in to help that horse is through that human being. So you better start liking that human being, or at least learning how to navigate it, because the only way you're going to help that horse is through that person. If you give up on that person, you're giving up on that horse. If you truly care about that horse, you got to know about people. And people are not all that bad. People can be understood. And you just got to understand that just talking at them, we don't work like that. Humans learn knowledge, especially something as complex as horses, in layers. There's a concept that's very, very important that I wish everyone would understand, and it's called threshold concepts. And what it means is that with a particular concept, you can't just learn the whole thing. Your brain has to learn it in layers. Like they got to learn one idea and then another idea. Then they have to experience something else. There's a few portholes that people have to go through to understand a concept, to be able to see it. And so what happens, you might stand there, and you probably experience this yourself, Daniel. How many times have you experienced someone that you've given the same lesson to every single time? Like it's the same thing you're saying over and over again. And there you are, every time you meet them, you try to say it somewhere different. You try to just tweak it because you can see they haven't got it. And even though they might tell you and regurgitate back to you your words, you can see they haven't got it, right? Now, that's a threshold concept problem. There's something they're missing. And I had this extraordinarily fabulous one of my clients, and she'd never follow through or be effective with the pressure. So what would happen is that she was always having this constant kind of battle with the horse to go forward, because the horse would get a bit agitated with her. And it didn't matter what happened. She knew she had to, she could tell me that. I said, you got to throw her through and be effective, and motivate the horse to be able to do it. And one day she contacted me, and she'd had this amazing moment with her iWatch. So she was a really good athlete, this lady, and she was a runner. And anyway, this she'd set her iWatch to be like a bit of a coach, telling her to pick up the pace, right? Anyway, one day she found herself, she yelled at a watch, right, when it was telling her to pick up the pace, right? She yelled at it. And then all of a sudden she realized that with the horse, and I was trying to tell her, we're getting the horse to do something that's very physical. And what's happening, if we've got to keep them fit, and what she was trying to do was a particular sport that required the horse to be quite fit. But she was always backing off on it all the time. So the horse could never get fit. so you kind of had to push it that little bit to like find that fitness, right? And she was always backing off and never letting it get there. Then all of a sudden it all made sense. See, she told me she was seeing the horse's negativity to her asking it to go forward as like a child not wanting to do something, right? But then she realized it was pushing through that running thing. And she realized that this was a coaching thing. It was like she realized she'd been that coach in the gym that when someone had gone, no, I don't want to do that, she'd gone, okay, fair enough. Let's not do that. When she'd never allowed that horse just to push that up a level so it could stop feeling exhausted and fatigued by the sport she was trying to do with it. And although I'd given her that lesson like multiple times about being effective, suddenly it was that moment with her iWatch that changed everything. When she felt it herself, that little bit of annoyance of that coach saying, step up the pace, So she got it. And so she had to have that experience for that idea to cross into her mind, even though I told it, even though she could blurt it out. It was her mind interpreting the horse as actually being like a child, saying it didn't want to do it, her feeling bad about it, and then seeing it. Maybe it's not feeling bad about it. Maybe is the fatigue thing, and she had to push it through. And then suddenly that one thing that happened, man, she was off. She was off. So she got past that threshold. She got the understanding. She got it, bang, and a horse was never the same again. It had lost all its kind of negativity or grouchiness and stuff like that, and it was just on board. Conflict off.
She had a parasympathetic light bulb moment, huh? Just to cringe you out a little bit there.
Yes.
That's part of like my arena sayings, I call them, my little words of wisdom. Just to me, the textbook case of what negative reinforcement is the saying, make the right thing easy and the wrong thing difficult. And that saying's getting shit on a lot these days. Yeah. And it seems to be, I forgot what the terminology used, but the sliding of these terms evolving into something other than what they have historically been. There is not a 6-month period that goes by that I don't peel another layer off of, make the right thing easy and the wrong thing difficult, and have one of those light bulb moments. And usually it's like, I've been doing this 30 years. How in the hell have I never realized that this meant that? Like, that's so simple. And I've been doing this long for how many thousands of hours, and I haven't made that connect. Like, how dumb of a human am I to have not made that connection yet? There's not a 6-month period that goes by that particular saying doesn't reveal itself to me in some new and important way. And I love those things. To me, like I was talking about the principles, that is something that is boiled down to the fewest number of words possible into an absolute truth. And when you take that truth and you apply it in all these different it's still true in every one of them. And then there are the layers to, and that's genius. I tend to be very bloviated and use 1,000 words when I know I probably could have said the same thing in 80. So I'm the opposite of that, I guess, but I aspire to it at some point in time.
It's another one that I'll give you, that following feel, right? So following feel. So first of all, you got to go back to my first ignorant self. When I first heard that, I was like, oh, that annoying cowboy bloody poetry talk, right? That's what I was like, don't understand it like that. Then I went through the phase of like, man, I can write you a PhD and a thesis and so many things on what this means, what feel means. It's very complex and fabulous and wonderful. And then it was only like probably a couple of years ago that I went, oh, it literally is just following a feel. It's teaching a horse a feeling and getting them to track it. Like, it literally is just following a feel. Like, it is so beautifully simple that that's all it is. And it's so remarkable that I had to go through this whole kind of rejection, not understanding, thinking it's bullshit, thinking it's the most wondrous thing that I'd ever heard that I can write pages and pages on, to realizing it's just like so simple. It's not funny. So, I know you like, I think it's Bill Dorrance's book, Running
True Horsemanship Through Feel.
Yeah, True Horsemanship Through Feel. It's sitting there in my bookcase over there. And it's so funny. I've read that book 4 or 5 times now, and as I evolve, as I read it, it has different meanings. It's so cool. like with my new eyes, as I cross deeper and deeper and deeper. And I get it's just like it was like condensed down to, and you know something better and better and can use fewer and fewer words. That's it. But it took me a journey to actually get, and I'm sure I'll probably next year or whatever read it and get a whole other different level of meaning. Yeah. So yeah, make the right thing, the wrong thing difficult. Same deal.
Yes, ma'am. I'm very guilty of that as well, and I often hesitate to ask people about this because, again, it almost seems like a condescending question. But I think maybe one of the most, I have a question in my lightning round that I use sometimes of what's your favorite book. It almost should be, what book do you think enough of that you've read it 5 times? Because if there was a lot in that book, you didn't get all of it reading it once. There are quite a few books that's just like that. I read them periodically, and every time I read them, I get a whole new set of things out of that book, seeing it with different context or perspective, just like that. So
that's my number one book, is that book. My other book that I'll say, which is really good, it's a guy called Ross Jacobs, and his book is The Essence of Good Horsemanship. I love that book. That Ross taught me to see horses' thoughts. So I used to once just be able to see a behavior, right? Just a behavior. But you can actually see a horse's thought before they do it. And I love his book. He's very influenced by Harry Whitney. Harry Whitney? Yeah, very influenced by Harry Whitney. And and so I think a lot of his ideas actually came from Harry. But it's a very beautifully written book. It's good. It's not a training book at all. It's written as a series of essays by Ross. And I remember I went and saw Ross. So I loved his book. I loved his writing. Then I went and saw Ross, and I was supposed to sit there for two hours. I didn't get to go in the clinic. I could only go and audit. And I remember watching him thinking, man, this guy writes well, but what the hell is he doing? Like, this is weird. And this is so roundabout, just flapping and clapping and making noises and doing all this crazy stuff. And so I thought he was crazy there for the first 2 hours. And then suddenly I saw what he was talking about. And that, so although I don't prescribe to Ross, kind of has a principle instead of methods, and that makes him hard for people to understand. But that idea of a horse's thought and being able to see it beforehand, or the idea that you transfer your thoughts to the horse, like down the lead rope through feel. That was a real crucial thing for me to learn, to be able to see not just canter, not just the horse turning left, right, or stopping, but being able to see the layers that sat underneath that response. Yeah, another good book.
I asked you the thoughts or feelings questions. I'm pretty much on the extreme of thoughts. I'm pretty kind of robotic as a person, so I am conscious of it. I try to pull myself aware, and at the same time, so let me say what that means for some people that might not. It's that I'm hyper rational. So that there has to be kind of empirical data. We got to understand why this works. So the woo woo type stuff doesn't appeal to me at all. The more intuitive side. At the same time, when I'm working a horse, I am open enough to recognize there are things going on here that I'm aware of, but I can't explain. So like the feel thing, and there's an intuition. I know this horse is in this spot mentally. I'm not really sure why. I can't point to these 3 body language things that tell me that, but there's something going on here that's too subtle for me to really know what it is. But I'm definitely getting the vibe that this is what's going on. And I trust that. I know that I'm right there, even if I can't explain it. So like the concept of energy, this person grabs the lead rope and the horse changes to this state, and then you hand the horse off to this other person and he calms right down. Like, I've seen it, I trust it, I know it exists. Can I explain why that happens? I can't. I would love to see the research paper that boils that down to a heart rate, or let me say a real research paper, not the heart math pseudoscience stuff.
Don't get me started on the heart math paper.
I fell for that too. That may be my most recent. I hadn't read the research, and then someone called me out on a comment that I made on it, and so that embarrassed me a little bit. And then I started looking and asked another college professor that I respect quite a bit about it, and realized how junk that was. And yeah, I so live and learn, right? But anyway. So
yeah. Go
I
on.
did want to bring up your latest Canter Therapy podcast episode, and I have listened to many episodes. I don't want to act like I did a little research and just listened to your latest one, but I really liked the new home syndrome concept and the term you're trying to coin. So would you tell us just briefly what new home syndrome is?
Yeah. So I want to coin a term, new home syndrome, and it's just describe the thing that happens when horses change homes. Because a good portion of the troubled horses that I come across are horses that have actually been newly acquired, or they haven't been together in a partnership with the person for very long. It's normally been something new. And people just do not appreciate what a horse goes through when it changes home. It's a lack of appreciation of the horse as a species, as an animal, about what it goes through when it changes its environment and what happens to it, and how that can so disrupt it, and can really put it into a stress state and cause an avalanche or a cascade of problems. I wanted to coin it because you can actually argue it is a syndrome. Syndromes are things that have, kind of a predictable symptoms that happen at predictable times, and they can be tied. Although it's a thing normally in medicine and health, it does directly affect a horse's health. So I was trying to coin it, and it was so funny because I wanted to write the blog about the two, because I've got new horse syndrome, which is the human side of getting a new horse as well. But I decided to separate them because anything longer than too long, and people won't read it because it's too long. That's another conversation. But so I separated it. But it was really interesting that everyone jumped on the horse thing, because everyone is programmed to look at what's wrong with the horse, and they can't look at what's wrong with them. So that post went a bit viral, which was quite interesting. And so I wanted to draw attention to it. And it was so funny that if I gave it a label of something that sounded healthy and medical, people were like, whoo, they jumped hold of that, and immediately I've got it being published left, right, and center in different places, because people, it's like you're being diagnosed and given a label, so you're all right, this is what's wrong. And I didn't mind that, because it brought attention to, what actually happens to horses, because I got a little bit sick of people going, the horse was drugged, or I was lied to, or, this thing. And it's like, no, the poor animal just probably it's rocked up at your place. It's all out of sorts. You've then had a fight with it. Hasn't been able to sleep. It's got screaming ulcers from the experience. It can't be itself. That horse that you got there is not itself. It's a very stressed form of itself. So, trying to draw attention to that. And it's been really cool, the amount of people that go, well, how can I? Well, okay, this is going to happen. How can I make it easier for them? Or at least give them a damn chance. Give them a damn chance. Give them a routine, give them some exercise to deal with their stress, and understand that horse is not going to be the horse you rode when you trialed it, because it still had the ghost of the rider on it from its owner. So, maybe you have to pick up your skills, So I'm glad that it did go as viral as it did.
That kind of brings me down to another term that I wrote down you had mentioned earlier, and I completely agree with this. That may be a very obvious thing to say off of my personality, but people tend to be very passive about their horses, and that does not tend to serve the horse well. So you asked the question, I'll ask you to answer it now. What could someone do with the new horse at the new place, in the new environment, and the new rules and boundaries and rider and all? What would be some advice you would have for that person to ease that transition and give that horse what it needs to come out of new horse syndrome?
Yeah.
Or new home syndrome.
This is where people having to understand how to train basic handling onto a horse. This is why this is really important. A lot of people people don't have that skill. They don't have the skill of how to catch a horse, hold a horse, lead a horse, like basic things, teaching a horse that doesn't know it. And as I tell people go, oh, I want to know how the horse had it done before. And it's like, no, it doesn't work like that. The horse has to learn you, because you are never going to be its past owner. There is nothing about you, the way that you feel to the horse, even your weight, your height, how you pick up, you will never be that past owner. You have to teach the horse you have to imprint on the horse your signature of you. Therefore, you got to know how to create your signature on a horse. So I say things like, you got to start handling that horse, but you got to show the horse how you do it. So how is it handled? So it knows how to navigate that. And horses are like bendy metal. They'll learn those particular rules of engagement with you, and that will actually stem as an anchor for how they, and how your relationship goes. So I encourage people to start off from the start. Make sure that you do teach them how you lead them, how you catch them, how you lead them, how you tie them, how they work with you and you handle them in general, like how you saddle up, all that type of thing. And you show them that, and you just build them from the ground up before you go jumping on their back and loping around and potentially getting yourself in trouble. I also very conscious of telling people, whenever you form a new partnership with a horse, you're going to go through, stages of team development. There's an interesting guy from the 70s a researcher called Tuckman, that tried to work out how really good teams became really good teams. And he identified that teams go through 4 stages. The first stage is forming. You form a team, and it's all quite polite. Okay, so that's when they went and met the horse to buy it. It was all quite polite. That's all good. But then the next stage is called storming. And it's where there's conflict. And it's where you work out how to work together. There's conflict. Then there's a process where it starts to normalize, when you start working together, of knowing how you engage. And then the final stage is performing, right? Now, what Tuckman tried to do, and this is people, and I don't mean to put people stuff onto horses, but you got to understand that we are a team, a partnership that we form with a horse. That what Tuckman tried to do is he tried to eliminate that horrible storming bit. So there was no conflict or chaos within the team. Well, guess what? They never ended up performing ever, because the rules of engagement were never discussed, kind of thing. You wouldn't. So he realized that was an important stage, that you have to go through it. So there's that understanding. So getting those handling and teaching the horse the way that you do it, that's all part. And you will find some conflict as you do form. That's normal. But the horse, giving them that routine, that how you engage with them, is very important. Then there's things like understanding that, trying to keep their feed the same, because their gut's so impacted by the travel, depending on how long they've been on a truck or a trailer or whatever to get to your place in the first place. People thinking that just chucking the horse out in a group of other horses is going to be the greatest idea ever. Might not be, allowing the horse to arrive and feel safe as possible while it adjusts. Understanding that horses cannot sleep well, and they get sleep deprived for a time. So understanding that. So just understanding it from the horse's perspective, this is the advice that they get. But routine, exercise, I believe truly, I know in the podcast, Kat and I had different views on that. I believe in allowing them to exercise, like actually getting, like exercise is the number one thing for depression and anxiety in people. It's so vital. Sitting on the couch watching Netflix, no, it's actually allowing your body, if your body's stressed and pumping those stress hormones into your system, using that and putting that to use is good, important, and therapeutic. So I believe in allowing them to set in for a couple of days, of course, if they've been on a truck, but then giving them something to do and allowing them to, get a bit of air through their lungs and do a bit of exercise is important. So that's my recommendation.
Well, and I was familiar with, I didn't know Tuckman's name, but the forming, storming, norming, and performing. Yeah. I've been through some training that had that. And I love that you brought that up. We've kind of touched on this a couple of times, but I think it bears just saying that conflict, setting boundaries, the difficult, uncomfortable thing is a normal, necessary, and natural part of developing any relationship. It's the people that want to avoid putting pressure on a horse or anything that stresses them, they are doing the greatest disservice to that animal. It's way better. Like your friend, you had the case of someone that had this horse for 6 months and got nothing done versus someone that played with them for 2 hours and got a lot done. I think speed of learning is a valid metric for success and effectiveness of a technique. I've never seen any of these. I've never seen any of these situations where someone gets a horse. I'll even use the word that's traumatized, that came from a rescue, that was in a bad situation. Taking that horse to a new place and giving it 2 years off will not solve that problem. You can't just passively, doesn't wash away with the rain. Like, you have to get in there and get your hands dirty, and that's the quickest path to getting that horse to the other side and into a better functional state.
Yeah, absolutely. I've delved into why do people do that? Why do they be passive? Why do they worry about upsetting the horse? And what I found out is for a number of reasons. The most common one is that the emotional growth of that horse when it's worried triggers them majorly, okay? Because and it triggers them deep, and that's where people pleasing and people come from, is that they're scared of the emotions of others because normally they've had a bad experience during their childhood or whatever, and they're worried. And so you don't want to trigger that because you don't know how to handle it. Okay, you don't have the skills to handle a horse that gets big or worried. It freaks people out. And you see them, the people freeze. They freeze and go, they shut down themselves at it. People shut down. They shut down more commonly than horses, trust me. The next reason why they do it, again, it's the whole people, they want the horse to like them. And that rejection thing, that thing you said right at the start about how animals or whatever can be that person's place of safety. Right. So then you're delving into that direction. So you're hitting hard at deep things inside people that are all fear-based. And that's why they won't go there. So to help people understand that, and it's a constant, it's the biggest thing I come up against at the clinic is getting people to be effective with their horses. And they have to have, first of all, the concept of why, but they've got to develop that belief. They've got to trust me in what I'm saying. And then they actually have to have the physical skill to be able to do it. Like, Daniel, how often have you said to someone, you've got to give that horse a bit of a tap, a bit of a tap or a bit of, you've got to be effective, right? And you'll demonstrate it. And just say if there's a scale of pressure of, 1 to 10, you go in and, because, get a feel for a horse, you'll give them a 6, right? You'll hand it to the person and they'll go, yeah, got it. Okay. And I said, right, you've got to give about a 6, and they'll give it 0.5. Okay, because they just don't have the rope skill as well, and they're all uncoordinated. Their mind's not connected to their body. So it's quite a realm of why people can't be effective. First of all, it's the belief in them. Secondly, it's this like hidden core things within inside them of protectionism and how they protect themselves and fear. And then there's the understanding of what they're doing, and worried how they'll look, or worried if the horse likes them, fear of rejection and all that kind of thing. But yeah, they need a lot of practice and a lot of time. And that's why I get them to do very, very simple things with a horse. And I said the round pen's normally the safest place to actually see that, because the horse is away from them. It's not so close. It's not connected to them. And that's where I get them to learn that. That's normally my greatest place, is to teach them those particular skills, because it's layered. It's layered. It's not because they want to be nicey to the horse. It's truly it's layered in stuff. The worst people are some people that have actually experienced just like violence in their own growing up. And there's a lot of that, and they equate it with that as well. So it can be quite, as I said, humans are a chimpanzee with a head full of snakes, as Jordan Peterson describes. And there's many snakes to it that you kind of got to unpick. And the only way to do it is be really patient with them and to see what's going on, see what, tick through it, make it easier for them to, give them more space, give them something that's simple. So in a round pen, it's just going your way, like a simple task, or backing a horse up. Simple. Yeah.
I find too, you talked earlier about people not having an awareness of their body and what it's doing. Tell me if you've ever had this experience, but I've had a lot of people, I start them in a round pen working a horse on the ground, and let's say we want to send him counterclockwise, so we're looking at the left side of the body. and I will get behind the person, and they will be rotating ahead of the horse where their body stops the horse. And I'm like, no, I grab their shoulders and I need you pointing right here, and I'll let go of them. And 2 seconds later, they've jumped right back up ahead and stopped the horse. And that's where they can start to become aware of what their body is doing, that the horse is reading you and affecting off of you. One of the things I haven't necessarily heard you say that I kind of wanted to touch on in conjunction with the new home syndrome.
Yeah.
I find this paradox in people a lot. They undervalue the fact that they as an individual are building a rapport and a relationship with this horse as an individual. So the version I use with that is like, my wife's this beautiful redheaded lady, and I can walk up to her anytime I want and kiss her right on the mouth. But if some other guy tries it, he's going to get a very different reaction from her. And so when you're starting to work this horse, you have to realize that you're kind of starting from scratch. And just because the previous owner could accomplish X, Y, and Z on that horse doesn't mean that you necessarily can. And to me, that kind of feeds in with that new home syndrome that we were just talking about, that you gotta treat that like it's a transitional period, and you have to rebuild that relationship. I do find very often you have people that they're 3 weeks in with the new horse, and that's when they start to claim that, oh, they must have drugged him or whatever, because now he's totally different. And it's like, no, now he's figuring out that you can't control him. That's what's going on, and he's just insecure and has no boundaries, and he doesn't know what the hell, he's floundering around and needs some structure and some leadership from you, and you're not not fulfilling it. It's not chemistry at play here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yep, no, I get that. Yeah, and it's just the primate in us. Really good book. Dr. Patricia McConnell, there's a book called On the Other End of the Leash. She's an aggressive dog specialist, and she wrote a book about humans, basically humans and what we do to dogs with our humanness. And that whole wanting to kiss and cuddle and it's totally primate, but that's our behavior. And we impose it on the horse without thinking. That's not their love language. That's not how they get it. But there's this drive in us. And of course, when we're nervous or wanting to be liked, of course, we get more touchy and feely. Of course, if we have ownership over something, we do that. But touch is not touched by a human in that way is not the horse's love language. You gotta do a kind of a balanced deal with the horse about expressing your human love for them and what they tolerate. I'm very measured with it because I understand it's not really their thing.
When I was doing a lot of the decoding body language and trying to get real specific with it, I was probably a little more heavily into dominance theory and all of that at that point.
Yeah.
So I basically decoded. I found about 3 things that horses physically do to one another to express affection. The most common is the mutual grooming, where they're biting each other on the neck, and then there's some other things with mares and foals. But there's like 21 or 22 different clear physical threats that horses express through their body language within a herded environment. So if you really want to talk about what a horse is, the expressions of threats and violence within their body language far outweighs any kind of expression of physical expression or we're friends. And just their whole reference for what those relationships are like is so foreign to us that we just can't really contemplate it, Well, I've kept you quite a long time here, and I don't want to slow you down. I've enjoyed the conversation very much. We probably need to have you on again at some point in the future, and we could go on and on and on with some more of this stuff. We will have, as always, links in the show notes to Dr. Shelley's website. We'll link her podcast she's co-host on, which is, again, Canter Therapy. I would definitely recommend that y'all go check that one out. They have some pretty cool guests and some, like I say, some pretty cool thoughts that I think have I appreciate that they take the thought process and the critical thinking in some new directions that explores some things you probably haven't considered, and I think that's always good. And you should definitely have a bend of the scientist that she is, and that there's no bullshit in this lady. She is trying to be as honest and truthful about it as is possible. So,
Yep.
uh,
Yep.
is there anything that you would like to say or talk about as the last word that I have not thought to ask you yet, or anything that you have coming up, a new course or anything like that you'd like to tell them about?
Oh, no, not really. I just really appreciate you having me on. I appreciate you being like a fellow person out there that's pushing for, a good reality check for horses by keeping them front and center and not letting the humanness and the human side kind of swamp them. And that's what's going on. You and I, and there's a number of us out there that are all in this constant battle to try to let the horse remain a horse. And not get swept into concept creep that we've talked about. And I really appreciate it. So you keep doing your thing, keep doing our thing as we fight this silent battle to keep the horse front and center and not be drawn off by the human emotions and, and kind of ideologies that are ideologies, but they're not realities. So thank you. And thank you for having me on and giving me a voice. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Y'all check out her podcast, Canter Therapy. And again, we'll link to the website and her online courses and stuff on her website. So,
yeah. Thank you.
We'll see you next week for another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I've been your host, Daniel Dauphin.